session today. And yes, we're recording. So please let us show the next slides. Oh, that slide. Okay, not the screen. The next one, please. Okay, so let's remind ourselves of our purpose for this workshop. So yesterday we have tried to address the first 2 points, aligning our program with focus on Indonesia, but also we had a session for the international national team attendees that came here in Jakarta. But today we're focusing on the third purpose, which is to explore mechanisms for sustainably financing this initiative internationally. Indonesia is one of our top implementing countries, and we're learning from them. But at the same time, we will learn from everyone else today. So the outcome for this session today is also to strengthen and to sustain Greenfin's implementation. I think we're all united. I don't need to tell you how important it is to continue this program. But many of our countries also listening in today sometimes have questions like, after this particular month, how are we going to continue implementing the program? These are sometimes tough discussions, especially when it comes to financing. But we will be trying to be open and innovative and collaborative and imaginative today, and see where it can bring us in terms of like ideas and potential routes to take for our program. So without further ado, the agenda, just to give you a rundown, we're going to hear 2 presentations today. We will hear from the operations director about Greenfin's, how it's adopted, expanded, and financed all over the world. Then we will hear from Chris Rosado about a feasibility study that is funded by the IUCN, and I'll introduce him later. We'll have an opportunity to ask questions. Please feel free to write down your questions while you're listening. You can also hand them to me, but I can also invite you to speak on the microphone. For our online attendees, you please are welcome to chat on the Zoom, and we can also ask you to unmute, and everyone in this room can hear you. Before lunch, we will start with we will have our first session for a learning exchange. We have prompts. We're going to use in-person discussion, but today we're going to use other tools like Zoom, of course, and also Mentimeter. I hope we're all fine with that. We have a small room so that we can also invite the online participants to contribute to this discussion. After lunch, we will have another hour of just the exchange, and then we will summarize it. We will have a break, and then we'll review the results of the roadmap yesterday. So Dea from Coral Triangle Center has made a very nice summary of that draft elements of the roadmap, and it's very interesting once it was put in on the document. Then we will close by 3:20 today. And then after that, we invite you to join us at the third floor poolside for a very small but special networking event. Does anyone have questions about today's agenda? Nope. Okay. Let me welcome to you somebody who you met yesterday already. Please welcome JJ Harvey, Operations Director at Reef-World Foundation. Round of applause, please.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Selamat pagi. Thank you very much again for joining us today, and also for those of us who are joining us virtually online as well. My presentation today, I'm going to go through basically the origins of Greenfins and talk about the growth, the phase that we're currently experiencing at the moment. I'm going to go through sort of a past, present, and future scenario. I want to talk about the demands and the opportunities, but also the current challenges that we're facing at the moment as well. Then we're going to obviously move towards the future, looking towards moving forwards, but this is sort of rolling in for the theme of the day, thinking about how do we progress from here, as well as addressing those challenges that have been highlighted. So you're all very familiar with green fins, and I'm not going to go into too much detail about what it is, but I'm going to talk about how we've got to where we are. I'm going to run through the history and cover some key aspects. I want you guys to sort of view this information, whether it's new or old information, with kind of new eyes. It gives an insight as to the model that we have today. And it's, moving forwards, it's really important to recognize the history, and that can help understand why it's been set up in the way it has been. Off the back of yesterday's workshops and the breakout groups and some of the ideas and thoughts that came up, with the history that I talk about, I want you to examine the weaknesses and the strengths of these origins as well. So I'm just going to give a little story right from the beginning, in terms of where it all started, and how we very much see green fins as one of a kind. So I actually was studying marine biology at university and wanted to go and get some experience abroad. So fresh out of university, along with my partner, Chloe, we decided to go and try and get some on-the-ground experience in Southeast Asia, rather than looking at some rocky intertidal shores in the North Sea near Newcastle. We decided to go work on a project in Borneo, Malaysia, and then we were at universities in the Philippines, Indonesia, and we were looking to try and get full-time employment. Turned out it was a really hard thing to do. We were basically on our way back to the UK after about 18 months, and we decided to stop by the Phuket Marine Biological Centre in Thailand. And this is where we offered our help and services and said, what could we do? We were looking for research, actually. And everyone directed us immediately to go and speak with Nippon Pongsawan, who's a coral reef specialist. He was delighted to have these two young, fresh-faced volunteers come along, and he immediately put us to work supporting this program, Greenfins. He said, we have a whole bunch of scuba diving operators that are primarily foreign-owned, and it'd be really useful to have two foreigners supporting the project from that angle. It was at this stage where we met Anne Paranjotti, who's the founder of the Reef-World Foundation, who was working and living in Phuket at the time as a scuba diving instructor. And she had just established the Reef-World Foundation as a very small charity that was supporting alternative livelihoods, training up fisher folk communities to become snorkel guides, as opposed to carrying out destructive fishing practices. It was during this time, about 1998, 99, that Anne was in a bar and happened to come across Leonardo DiCaprio, who was at the time filming The Beach, which was taking place in Phuket and Maya Bay nearby. They got talking over many evenings, and along with Leo and Leo's mum, they were discussing about the various problems, and they were concerned with their filming, the impact that they'd have on the beach, and with great foresight were concerned about the impact it could potentially have if the film was a success on lots of tourists coming to Thailand and wanting to go diving and snorkeling. So together with the founder of Reef Check, who was at the time developing a survey technique for coral reefs, they decided to carry out surveys before and after the filming. And then Leo ended up supporting the Reef-World Foundation and Reef Check, and that's where we are today. Going back to Greenfins, coming across the project, Chloe and I at first, when we heard about best practices for scuba diving, thought that's been done already. We just thought it was part and parcel with the training. Chloe was very much trained in the UK, and I had minimal experience in scuba diving at the time as well. But it was kind of a natural assumption that either there was government legislation or through the training agencies that some of the principles in terms of environmental sustainability were ingrained in that training. It turned out that wasn't the case. So we started looking online and found out there was no other single program that was looking at sustainability in diving and snorkeling worldwide. This was it. So we were actually due to go back to the UK and decided to miss the flight, stay in Phuket and do some more research, start working on the project and working with the scuba diving centres. It was there that we found that we identified there were many damaging practices that were quite commonplace and kind of accepted. Behaviors that were accepted, but like just chucking things over the boat all the time, spearfishing, collecting souvenirs while diving, and it was ingrained within the training almost as well. Not just diving, but also in snorkeling. There was a very low level of lack of awareness from a biological level in terms of what corals these rocks were, but also from an environmental impact point of view. People just not understanding what they were doing had a negative impact on the environment. We also identified there was an enormous amount of passion in the diving and the snorkeling community in Phuket, but that there was a huge willingness to engage, to create a change, and that they were invested in protecting their biggest asset, the natural environment. So there was an enormous chance to harness this energy and help build on this community and get the operations that were working together anyway, but to try and do that on a much larger scale and collectively create a huge amount of change. So Green Fins began as a United Nations program, and this was launched in 2004 by the UNEP, but it was kind of shelved because this was the same time, unfortunately, as the Indian Ocean tsunami. So nothing really happened. And it was at that very beginning phase that all work on it was stopped. And it was essentially just putting together a simple code of conduct for scuba diving. The UN wanted to create an awareness raising campaign. And they wanted it to be adopted by governments, obviously, because that's the modality that they work at. It was never intended to be a short-term project. They wanted it to be long-term, but they just wanted to have this code of conduct. And they provided some very simple seed funds to the government of Thailand. And they said, here's an idea, here's a project, run with it. And that was it. No guidance, no implementation, nothing. It was always intended to be freely available to all, no paywall. And this was something that was very much held at the front by Kun Nippon Pongsaman, who wanted to make sure that it didn't matter how big the operation was or the business, even if it was just a one-man band, that they should have access to environmental education, particularly when it came to coral reefs, which is a speciality. It should focus on local threats, keep it tangible and simple, looking at what that individual can do. Every single one of these code of conduct points should be within the control of that individual. So it wasn't looking at wider climate change impacts. It was looking at, like I said, things that were within their control, immediate control. It was also originally designed to be an alert network, harboring that sense of community, and wanting to use the scuba diving community as the eyes and the ears underwater, being able to feed that back. A lot of government departments and NGOs didn't necessarily have the funds and the support to go scuba diving, so why not harness the tourism sector that were doing it on a daily basis? It was also designed to support existing and develop new legislation, and again, that's ingrained in the code of conduct. So in partnership with the UN, Reef-World started to develop this code of conduct a bit more and look at it in more detail, and this is what has been developed and is now known as Green Fins. Chloe and I decided to test this a bit more. We literally were going from dive center to dive center, trundling along beaches. The epitome of the phrase mad dogs and Englishmen walking in the middle of the day in the tropics with a heavy backpack. We even had a projector in the backpack to print off the certificates that we were providing to people. And we noticed there was a huge amount of interest in this and it was gaining a lot of attention. So we were literally building awareness one dive center at a time, looking at the assessment process itself, and we were growing across Thailand. And then we decided to develop it across the world. Then the team, Reef-World, 2022, we had a big evolution, which I'll talk about in a minute, and has expanded exponentially since. So 20 years later, it has very much become known as a bit of a brand overhaul, big change there. It has become known as the environmental standards for scuba diving and snorkeling, and it is very much now a recognized brand, to the point that people think Green Fins itself is an organization, which is one of the struggles or challenges that we'll probably talk about later. It was very much tested in Thailand and the Philippines to begin with. Again, this was with the help of key individuals, founder Anne from the charity, Nippon, Pecan, Sam Craven, and a huge host of volunteers. Again, a lot of these are still supporting greenfins on a volunteering basis, and that shouldn't be the case. And again, this is something we'll talk about later. So this small team started working with the local dive industry, distributing the code of conduct, and then we started to expand to helping organize cleanups, handing out educational materials, carrying out citizen science projects, and building this community that became a very effective bridge of communication between public and private sector. Having this independent brand of greenfins was a really good sort of platform to get both government and private sector talking at the table. But the mission wasn't just about to inspire action. It was very much to look at reducing environmental threats. So using the code of conduct as the foundation, Reef-World developed an environmental risk assessment. So this was based on a financial risk model, and it was looking at adapting the traffic light system of green, yellow, and red, with green having all the environmental risk is mitigated, yellow, some environmental risk still exists, and red, that there's no control over environmental risks, something which you're all familiar with. Something we found from the beginning is there were very, very few greens to have all environmental risk mitigated. And we thought this was going to be a bit of a challenge. So for many, many years, in fact, I think it took about 15 years, there was no operation that had the perfect score. We started assessing operators who pledged to follow the code of conduct. By following a normal dive, it was the only situation to do it, because they would say one thing and then do another. And it wasn't just topside, you had to see what they were doing under the water as well. So you had to follow a dive with customers and see how they behaved. We had to ask a lot of questions, have conversations with the staff, and trying to find out which areas of the code of conduct were working and what wasn't. So initially, this was just an internal exercise, but it was with the dive shop owners and managers that they started asking for feedback. They wanted to know how they could improve, what they could do better. And so this is where the process of providing that feedback on the assessment and identifying what they were doing well, but also identifying what they weren't doing so well, was created from. We also worked out, by applying this technique, it was a very effective way at creating behavior change. Rather than just saying, this is something you're doing wrong, it was highlighting it with the assessment, with their process in a collaborative manner, and getting them invested in it by them choosing what they need to do, getting them to come up with the solutions rather than saying, this is what you have to do. It was giving them options and availability. So at this point, Reef-World's just a team of 3, supporting Greenfin's team in Thailand, refining the assessment process, developing the materials. Membership journey was working. Feedback from managers was useful, helpful, and motivating. And we started to collect and share all of the tips and solutions. We don't have all the answers. You have to get that through a community. And so we noticed there was real potential here in collecting all of this information. But in order to scale, we need to develop the Greenfins Assessor Training Program, and this evolved into a 6-day intensive workshop for government and NGO staff. Many of you guys who have undergone that have helped shape that to what it is today. It was piloted originally in Malaysia and then Indonesia, and then reinvigorating activities in the Philippines. And it was growing from community basis, sort of low level, to a much larger cross-boundary network. So this was fantastic because we allowed us to share lessons learned from different countries. The Reef-World was growing slowly, and with us as an entity supporting these countries, we could help building this solutions bank, learning from the assessors, and sharing this between the different countries. Since the assessments were conducted on an annual basis, and being marine biologists and scientists at heart, it was all about the data for myself and Chloe, but also we noticed that there was a very common pattern. And we noticed that we could see Greenfins members who had been putting a lot of hard work and effort did start to show a difference in their assessment results. In the Greenfin certified system, lower scores means lower impact, and over the years, we started to see this pattern occurring year on year with a lower impact. In 2013 and 2016, with the help of Bangor University, we published 2 peer-reviewed scientific papers, which was great because this proved to us that it is scientifically working as well. And this also helped build the case for implementing Greenfins in other countries. So Greenfins was now in 6 countries, and we had assessor teams serving multiple tourism hotspots in each country. But this was only dependent on the funding and the capacity at the time. A huge step forward for the network was the development of the Train the Trainer program in 2019. And this helped create more autonomy, something which was always a target. It shouldn't be managed internationally by other people telling another country how to do things. It has to come from within that country, and ultimately they are always going to be best placed to deliver on that. So creating a Train the Trainer program was a real step forwards for us. This also freed up Reef-World to take on more of our international coordinator role and to look beyond Southeast Asia and Asia and look towards the Indian Ocean, and also to keep with fundraising, which was a constant requirement as well. So to date, we've trained a team of 15 countries. I think you guys know this, Asia, Indian Ocean, Pacific. But one thing we've noticed is that the program is very replicable. The diving industry, particularly, and the snorkeling industry to a lesser extent, is fairly predictable around the world when it comes to the impacts on the environment. Some countries score better than others in different areas, but essentially, as a program, it was easily adopted. Now, this in-person work does require extensive time and funding, which are your standard bottlenecks to reaching a global scale, but with your expansion, growing the program from 1 to 2 countries isn't the same as 10 to 20 countries. With the impacts of climate change only ever increasing and the present demand from other countries, we needed to scale faster. And going digital was always inevitable. This was something which wasn't possible due to availability to the internet in certain more remote locations where diving industry was a big place, but it was now becoming more accessible. So this is when we began the ambitious journey to try and build this first of its kind digital tool and develop this long awaited idea. We needed to raise significant funding to do this. And one of the few benefits of the global pandemic actually worked in our favor, because a lot of funding shifted from on the ground activities to digital support. So luckily we're through the Inter-American Development Bank, through their Beyond Tourism program, we're able to get a grant, which helped us develop the hub over 2 years. So we very rapidly managed to put this together and launched it in 2022. As a result of this, we were also able to transfer across all of the existing members and certified membership. So we had about 1,000 assessments that we had to transfer onto this new digital platform, which was great because we were able to use the data and put that and compare it against digital membership as well. 2022 was a busy year. Not only did we launch digital membership, certified members continue to have their in-person assessments, but we also changed the structure a little bit. We increased a minimum standard, again, something that was fed back from operations, that not everyone should be a Greenfins member. As the program became more recognized, some operators who were terribly performing were still getting a certificate. So we increased that minimum threshold. We also created a bronze, silver, and gold ranking structure. This wasn't just to monitor uptake, but was also, again, a behavior change thing, trying to get people to improve and leading with the stick rather than the carrot, which has always been our approach. We also made it possible for certified members to pay what you can, and we started to realize that we could start to use the hub as a way to attract more funding and support. Both types of membership have the same hub access to the results, action plans, and so on. We have this extensive solutions library now, which is like over 100 different articles, reflecting 20 years of tips and tricks and advice and lessons. And it's become a real resource and portal for us. 4 years later was the results, and now we have everyone online. And it's only now we're starting to realize the true power and potential of this as well. We now, of course, have the online courses, which are becoming more and more popular, and we're getting requests for lots of different types of courses as well. So at the moment, we have the 2 online self-paced courses, which are available for all dive professionals, but also divers, tourists as well, which is a whole area or stakeholder group that we haven't directly targeted. We've always been looking at working within governments, within countries, with the businesses themselves. And so now we're wanting to shift a bit of our focus and attention to the divers, because it's them that ultimately lead the direction of where the industry goes. Maybe one of the most recognizable parts of green fins is this huge suite of environmental materials, going just from one, the code of conduct, and now over these 20 years of experience and input from the members, we have over 100 posters, guides, infographics. We've translated a lot of them as well into different languages. And now with AI and everything, we're starting to see the benefits of translation that's happening online as well. It's still a bit rusty, and we'll always need that human element, but it is allowing us to have a much bigger reach and scale. So we talk about having reached 82 countries. This is possibly a bit of an inflated figure. You guys know this. It does mean we have operations within those countries. It doesn't mean we are working with the country itself, with the governments. Digital membership has always seemed as a bit of a step towards certified membership. It gives us the data and the history and so on, so we can go in and start to work with government and look and see where we can have our biggest impact. So it's really the people and you guys who are here with us, who we're sort of celebrating and supporting, but it's you guys who have helped shape Greenfins. So one of the biggest strengths is that human touch, from the in-person assessments, working with local assessor teams to supporting each other. So we had to be careful when we had this digital shift that we don't lose that. It's one of the biggest key elements of Greenfins. So we had to make sure that we somehow moved to a digital portal to be able to keep this. And this is where the idea community forum was central to our digital strategy. It's also, I mean, it's actually a requirement of their annual membership, is that they have to engage with it as well. So now members can talk directly and share tips with each other, celebrate their wins, organize events together, etc. And it's an absolute delight seeing an operation in the Caribbean speaking to an operation in Southeast Asia who have the same problems and are suggesting different solutions to each other. Doesn't always work because of material availability, whatever it is, but that helps set them on the right path, on the right track. And if there's a big enough demand, we can use that data to go to government as well. I think it's important to notice, or to highlight rather, the big focus at Reef-World, not just to work with the businesses and the operations, but there's a real need, if we want to make this big change with the industry, is to take a holistic approach, tackling the industry head on and focusing on all aspects of the marine tourism industry. So we touched on this yesterday. You know, we work with a lot of the training agencies, notably PADI, who were the first training agency to systemize environmental standards through their eco-center certification. But we have created a system in the back end to be able to replicate that with not just any training agency, but other organizations as well. So everything we do, we try and future-proof it. But we're also working on, you know, creating those international standards. I'm on the board, ISO, for developing international standards, all standards that cover diving. We're a member of the European Underwater Federation as well. So it was the platform for creating all the guidance and best practice. So all the lessons that I learned from Greenfins, it's feed back into this as well. So we have that sort of multi-level approach. We also hold lots of workshops, think tanks, panel discussions, etc. And all of this takes an enormous amount of time, which possibly isn't seen as much by the Greenfins operations. So there's all of this less public-facing stuff is all with the end goal to make sustainable diving and snorkeling the social norm. There's all these different areas of work components takes a lot of effort and work and time. And as a result, takes a lot of staff, which takes a lot of funding as well. So these are all the different areas. I think, Dev, you're going to go into this in a bit more detail, so I won't cover it too much time now. But it is a necessary requirement to do this. So moving on to the present, and talk about the demand and the opportunities. Again, we shared the slide yesterday, but it's just to highlight that there is an enormous growth in demand from tourism, sorry, from the tourists themselves. Tourists are a lot more aware today than they were even 5 years ago. And as a result of that, there's this huge shift, generational shift, for a desire to visit their destinations to be have more meaningful action. The demand for sustainable initiatives is growing enormously, and you start to see businesses as well as the tourists who are more aware of the state of our global coral reefs and are wanting to visit destinations that have a positive impact. When they go to somewhere, they don't want to take away from the impact from the environment when they're there. We work with countries that are looking for a trusted means of verification of sustainable businesses and data-driven findings demonstrate reduction in threats. And this is exactly what Greenfins delivers, and therefore the demand is enormous. Again, you've seen the slide, but again, it's just to back up that all the data is pointing in the right direction from every different stakeholder group that there's more demand for sustainability. So it's something we'd always hoped for, but I think post-pandemic, the interest is higher than it's ever been, and at a rate that I think has taken a lot of countries by surprise, as well as the tour operators, the businesses themselves. And so there's a lot of catch up, which means that all of a sudden we're seeing this huge demand for Greenfins membership. The growth in tourism itself, if you're not just looking at the sustainability and the demand for sustainable tourism, is enormous, as you guys know. Saw a report, I think only last week, that Asia Pacific's about to enter a growth phase from a recovery phase post-COVID. This was anticipated to take another 12 to 18 months from now before we're in this growth phase. Again, it depends. Some countries are doing better than others, but on the whole, in Southeast Asia, in the Asia Pacific region, that's the situation. We're also seeing a huge amount of emerging markets, large demand from, for instance, Saudi Arabia, new countries entirely, but also small island developing states, in well-established locations like the Caribbean. Countries like Anguilla are looking to really boom and double down on a scuba diving sector there as well. There's huge growth in existing markets as well, in China, in Hainan, where there's a lot of certifications take place. That's still growing. The demand on wanting to become certified has not stopped and is continuing. There's also a huge urgency and demand from an environmental point of view as well. To echo Ibo Rili's comments yesterday, we need to act fast. We need to deliver on committed targets and agendas to increase resilience to the unfortunate catastrophic and large-scale events which are inevitably coming our way, which we're starting to see more frequently. We're preparing the industry for a potential decline in marine tourism associated with healthy coral reefs. And we're also looking to prevent like a boom and bust approach to tourism. Avoiding over-tourism is becoming more commonplace, more aware, and this can be supported by having high-end, smaller scale tourism that delivers on quality rather than quantity. And we're seeing this more and more. But to deliver on quality, you've got to have real, measurable, and certified sustainable actions. And again, this increases the demand for Greenfins. So in terms of the current challenges, looking at continued growth in membership, but we are starting to show signs of decreasing growth rates. If we look at the last couple of years, you can see it starts to tail off. In 2022, we had a 15% growth. 2023, it was, and then it dropped to 11%. In 24, it dropped to 7%. We're struggling with member retention in certain geographic locations, and our inability to cope with this demand while supporting our existing member network, all natural growing pains. Now, the reasons for this are varied from country to country, but they include some of the following, which we've identified in terms of a national team capacity. This shift from just what was I said at the beginning, just an awareness program, providing a code of conduct, to this evaluation and training program that leads into monitoring, evaluation, and learning that feeds back into government legislation, requires a lot of capacity at the national team level as well. It's also highly intensive on the ground staff requirements. lack of clear ownership at government level. This is something I've always witnessed with Greenfins. I mean, tourism itself is cross-departmental. Ministries of tourism and ministries of environments the world over are both having to work on tourism aspects. So having that clear delineation between whose department it should fall under is always a bit of a tricky thing. And if you don't have someone who's invested that at the high level, it's very difficult for them to take ownership. And Greenfins is often undervalued as well, both by stakeholders, but also the national teams alike. You know, it can be seen as a resource for existing program delivery. It's basically just applying a brand to something that a lot of countries are already doing. They already have sustainable action plans within their long-term programs. It can be a solution provider to small-scale issues, but collectively can have a huge impact. And I think that's often undervalued as well. It's able to deliver on lots of government targets, from waste management, single-use plastics, but also protecting migratory marine wildlife and supporting transboundary issues as well. Now, this could also be because the program certified membership is free, and having anything that's free can undermine stakeholder engagement. And I think we're going to talk about that in a bit more. So it's worth noting that all of this instability in the country program often leads to additional costs to Reef-World, which means that we need to reactivate or retrain assessors instead of focusing on the country development and expansion as well. We're going to go into this in a bit more detail later, so I won't go into too much, but you know, part of a report with this project with IUCN, feedback from 10 Greenfins champions, 7 countries, looking at implementation challenges, but also the opportunities. Key sort of things that came out of this report is unstable government support and funding. You know, 7 countries of the network are unfunded and inactive. 3 of those countries are led by non-profit without any government support. 2 countries have successful government-led implementation. 2 countries operate just through through a government and NGO collaboration. And 1 country is currently looking to restart their activities altogether. Looking at leadership sustainability risks, 80% of the champions emphasized the need for succession planning. 6% called for greater institutionalization within the governments, something which we've always tried to do, but is very difficult due to a variety of reasons. And often that can just be governmental shift as it goes from one political party to another, often having to reset, start again. And assessor retention challenges. I mean, a lot of people here will be very familiar with that, but 70% cited their limited assessor capacity and retention as the biggest challenge. And it's worth noting only 30% of our champions are actually paid for Greenfin's work, and shouldn't be the situation. The majority are operating on a partially paid or a voluntary basis. Recommendations to tackle some of these, looking at diversifying funding. So this is like a key theme, and then leading on for the rest of the day today. We're looking at how we can do that. Ideas such as introducing membership fees, enhanced public-private partnerships as well. Looking at dedicated tourism taxes. I know a lot of countries are implementing tourism taxes on the point of arrival. Strengthening the assessor role, developing consistent compensation models, creating formal recognition systems, all of these things. And looking at enhancing the member benefits. Again, this is something we look to our members to try and provide input and let us know about what sort of benefits they'd like to receive. We have a pretty good idea, but trying to implement it is another thing. So moving forwards, just last couple of slides before I finish. Apologies, I know I've gone over time. Sustainable financing is really key, but it can resolve a lot of these issues, but it won't resolve all of them. It's not always a situation that you can just throw money at. It is an additional way to create, there are additional ways to create income and support our environmental and socio-economic objectives. So again, just going back to the slide, just a reminder that Reef-World do work on a lot of things behind the scenes. And all of this, each one of these different areas needs additional resources, funding, and collaboration with other organizations. just to finish on here, Greenfins wouldn't be possible without the funding that is primarily raised by Reef-World Foundation. It takes an enormous amount of our time and effort to do so. I noticed yesterday, in terms of the breakout groups and so on, and particularly from the international table as well, in terms of when we're talking about the financial resources, where should that come from? The responsibility often lies with Reef-World Foundation, which we completely agree with, and that's absolutely fine. But it does highlight the sort of the pinch point in terms of internationally operating greenfins on a global scale. We are absolutely laser focused on this, and this is why we created this workshop. The idea for this workshop was created a long, long time ago, and I'm really pleased to see that it's finally coming to fruition. We're already growing our corporate fundraising opportunities and increasing individual donations. We've had very, very small amounts of individual donations. I'd say more than 90% of Greenfin's work has been entirely grant funded over the years. We're also looking at other opportunities for sustainable financing, not just for the charity, but it's really important that we look at the financial sustainability for the national teams in country as well. Something that can bridge that divide. If there is a change in political parties, that shouldn't impact the program. So we need to make sure that the national teams, who are often NGO-led, have the funding and resources to support Greenfins in country as well. Now, this is a slide which Chris, who's speaking next, is going to talk about in a second, so I'm not going to go into this. In short, the green are the things that we charge for, the red are the things that we don't charge for. And this, just to bring it back to the very beginning, there was that real ethos of it, Greenfins being an awareness-raising program, about wanting to make sure there was no barrier to environmental education. So we're in a tricky path, being able to charge for things, but also to maintain that ethos, which is really what has made it so successful and had a lot of the positive impacts that we've had. I'll end there because I've gone vastly over time, and I'll hand over to Chris. But I just want to thank everyone, but also want to encourage everyone today. And it was a long day yesterday, and today's the last day. But to really think bold, share your experiences and ideas. Identify quick wins, but also identify roadblocks. If someone else comes up with an idea or suggestion, do highlight to see if that just wouldn't be possible in another country as well. But as always, please continue to help us shape the future of Greenfins. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Before we move to the next presentation, thank you so much, JJ, and hello everyone to our can you see me? Hello, hi. We're live on online as well, but let me acknowledge a lot of the findings that JJ has shared with us. We're also we're also informed by many people in this room. So he mentioned 10 champions or implementation champions. We would like to thank, of course, Indonesia, our host for today, Coral Triangle Center, Martin and Dea actively providing us these insights. Suika from Greenfins Japan. We also have Alvin from Malaysia, Grick from the Philippines, and then Dominican Republic, as well, Ruben, and then I hope I'm not, A from Thailand as well, and of course, all the other feedback that has been shared, especially in the last 6 months of all the research that has been done. Now, moving on to the next slide. I would like to also acknowledge and be transparent that this workshop is funded by the International Union of Conservation for Nature. And IUCN Ocean Director Mina Epps was in Bali Ocean Days a couple of weeks ago, and we're using this quote that was around the news, that she said, this kind of initiative, Greenfins, has been around for a long time, and it's also a tool to use to improve MPA management, but it needs to come with a business model. I also believe in market-based instruments to evolve this program. She was here, and the IUCN funding is to have this kind of conversation, exactly what JJ was presenting. Yesterday, we talked about how Greenfins was operating, but today we're talking more of the back end, like how it works. And we're gonna have sessions today to speak about that and to be open and creative to think about how can this program be sustained. With this program, we also engaged a consultant from the field of behavioral sciences, but also a patio dive instructor himself from the Creative Action Tank. Let me introduce also today our speaker, Chris Rosado.
Hi, everybody. Hello. Hello. All right. Thank you. Are we okay? So there can be some elements of some interaction. I did leave some stuff blocked out to just see what your thinking is about some of these data points that I'm gonna share. So my name is Chris Rosado. Yes, I am a behavioral scientist. I work with organizations to help them develop new programs and also with communities to help them to conserve the area. So that's how I found this opportunity to collaborate with this wonderful group of people on the Greenfins, trying to explore Greenfin's impact and the feasibility of implementing new income generation mechanisms. So our agenda today is, I'll keep it short and sweet for the background and purpose. I believe JJ laid down a great background on what's there, so there's no need to probably go over too much. But then you can see there's a next session. We'll talk about many fish in the sea. So when I say many fish in the sea, I'm talking about who else is out there? What are they doing, right? We're not the only ones out here, but there's many fish in the sea, but there's none like me. So I want to keep that in mind. We also got impact, right? Do we have impact? We'll find out. I believe so. And then the final part, looking at free or fee. So with free or fee, what that means is we have opportunities to monetize things. We have opportunities to optimize things. How do we figure out what makes sense, right? It's not all about money. It's not all about different processes that are not sustainable. So we have to figure out this balance. Just the background, of course, we know that Greenfins is spearheaded by the Reef-World Foundation and is supported by the UNEP. And of course, with the local partners here, CTC in Indonesia, and many other dive operators that are contributing to this process. So the purpose of my particular part of this research is to look at ways to increase evidence, specifically on economic and social benefits. And with that, in part, we're also looking at how Reef-World Foundation is able to maximize their impact in terms of the social and then as well as financial, so that there could be sustainable processes in the future. Of course, Indonesia is one of the wealthiest countries in the world in terms of coral reef species. There's several hundreds that are located here as we are part of the Coral Triangle. There's several hundred billions annually valued through the coral reef ecosystems. It provides support for 70% of the population. It provides 52% of protein intake. So it goes across the board, not just financial implications, not tourism, but also health as well. So there's a serious need to look at this holistically when you think about financing versus the outcomes and the impacts. So is Greenfins important to Indonesia? I would argue yes. As of 2019, 33% of the reefs were classified as being in poaching condition. And this is obviously heavily impacted by local pressures, which is some of the work that Greenfins directly approaches. Another way to say that is just look at these pictures. This is what happens when you don't have a Greenfins member operating. This is an anchor. This is some guy named Charlie. I don't know Charlie, but I know he wasn't a Greenfins member and he wasn't diving with a Greenfins operator. And then, of course, you have some unsustainable practices where you have new divers possibly stepping on coral reefs. So this is just a slight idea of like the impacts that are prevented every day by our members. So many fish in the sea, but none like me. All right, so we have some alternatives to Greenfins. Here, I looked at several different organizations. This is just a high-level sample. These are the most that were applicable to Greenfins and the processes that they have. We have intentionally International Standard XYZ, as I don't wish to promote or shame any other organization because they're all doing good work. So looking at the focus, we can see something interesting here. Greenfins is unique in that it focuses specifically on diving and snorkeling. As JJ had mentioned previously, we are very unique in that specific niche right there. And there's a lot of experience there. You can see that other organizations, they are in the business of doing sustainability standards before they're in the business of doing sustainability in many ways. So they have different niches, although they can cross over into the marine tourism. They focus on issues like sustainable tourism, nature-based tourism, environmental benchmarking. So they have different approaches to do a lot of the same work, but they're not as focused as Greenfins. The methodology, this is important. When you think about the methodology, we want to understand how robust are we? How do we look compared to these other organizations? Are we able to go neck and neck with them? Like, when you look at the methodology for Greenfins, if you're going specifically into the diving industry, if you're going specifically into the marine tourism industry, it's arguably more robust. However, these other organizations have quite interesting processes as well, which are very similar to our methodology as well. So you can see that when you look at the verification procedures. When you look at the verification procedures, you can see that we have very much similar activities, such as the assessments by the trained assessors, so our local partners, the Greenfins partners. Other organizations tend to use external audits with certified assessors. They have trained assessors that do audits for them internally sometimes, and they also do benchmarking against nature matrix and stuff. The frequency is where we get interesting. Greenfins is very ambitious with every annual assessment. So it's quite robust. Where you look at other organizations, they tend to go between 1 to 2 or 3 years even between their assessments. There is elements of online database and self-reporting as well, similar to some aspects of Greenfin's methodology as well. And this is the big one we want to look at too. So what does it mean in terms of looking at our quality and seeing how close we are to them? Looking at our ability to do assessments and the quality of these things. We look at the fees, and obviously the fees are very different. But this is by design as well, as it was mentioned before. We are approximately 1/10 the price of these other organizations that are doing very similar work. This is intentionally text heavy for our non-native English speakers, so I hope you appreciate it. For everyone else, please bear with me. You can look at the highlights. So again, just to revamp what we have seen when we compare to alternative standards, Greenfins is hyper-focused on the dive operations and marine tourism, unlike anyone else. The assessment methodology is just as robust, if not arguably better. The verification procedures are different. When Greenfins utilizes internal assessors or through their partners, whereas other organizations tend to farm it out to third-party or independent assessors. There's a process of having annual reports and audits. That's similar to Greenfins as well. Where we differ is that we have every year we have audits or assessments, whereas other organizations, they vary before a couple of years. Something interesting to note too, this kind of speaks to the approach of being a social sort of approach versus a financial driven model. The other organizations tend to have a process of increasing the fees annually, which is arguably necessary at times. Greenfins also is known as the low cost competitor in this space. So we are the value, and that's again intentionally because we want to have as many people protecting their coastal environments. Something else different to consider and think about as we imagine what future opportunities could look like is that their audit fees are sometimes separate from the actual certification fees. So the certified body actually accepts payment separately from the actual certification organization. So then again, the key selling points is the specialized focus, the rigorous assessment, the affordable membership, the practical tools and resources, the education and awareness. All of these packaged together is how Greenfins really differentiates what it does. We're not just doing assessments and giving certifications, but it's about education and bringing awareness and helping the coastal communities and the dive operators kind of maximize their ecosystems and provide better benefits for everyone. So that was just what we see when we look at the other organizations, but do we actually have impact? And what's the best way to find out if we have impact? We should talk to our members, right? So we talk to our members and we try to find it out. What resonates with them? I don't know if you can guess what these are, but we're looking at social impact, economic impact, and environmental impact. So there was 3 different surveys in addition to an additional interviews, in-depth interviews. And putting all this data together, we were able to understand how these programs and these products and services that we provide, what's the feeling from the members? How do they experience this? So if we're looking at the social impact really speaks to the ability to network and communicate with others. How is it that a dive operator is able to educate the public for the purpose of marine conservation? When we look at economic impact, it's a bit more straightforward. Is there any cost savings? Is there any opportunity to generate more income because they are a member of Greenfins? Looking at the environmental impact, we're looking at the ability to support and encourage sustainable marine tourism. This is more action-driven rather than the connection. So that's important to note between the social and the environmental impact. This is the definitions for this research. The demographics of our research, we did do an international members section of the research, but we're focusing on Indonesia for today. So if we're looking at the Indonesian demographics, we were able to capture about 38% of the certified members, the current certified members, 14% of the digital members, and we were even able to get 5%, more or less 5% of members who had already finished or moved on. When we look at the data, actually, so where do they come from? What do they look like? So we have 60% from Bali, which it makes sense as is a central hub for dive tourism industry in Indonesia. And then we have 40% from outside. So this is quite a balanced mix, actually. The people who most likely responded to our survey were actually the owners, and that was 80%, with managers being 20%. So this kind of helps you kind of imagine the perspective that they're giving. It's important to know how they perceive the impacts themselves. The average membership duration was about 60% for 1 to 2 years, and there was about 10% who were more than 5 years. Okay, looking at the social impacts, I like to get the tough stuff out of the way. So when we were looking at the social impacts, we didn't shy away from things that we were thinking maybe work. We wanted to really understand, like, how was this perceived, right? So when we asked about the hub, about 60% of the hub was unsure if this helped with networking. So this is something to take into consideration for future developments. However, we had a lot of beneficial impacts. According to the dive members, according to the members, 90% of them believe that their staff's knowledge increased directly because they were Greenfins members. 100% agreed that this enhanced communication with people who were coming to their dive shops. And this is quite interesting, actually. If you triangulate different data points, there was even members I had interviewed that were not members. There were stakeholders that were not members, and they also were very keen to download the education materials and share it. So the hub is quite polarizing, you might see along the data. Here we have, when we're talking about the management support, this means like the tools that are available on the hub. And how does that actually support the dive operator with management and activities? 70% of them agree that it does support the staff. So looking at the economic impacts. So some of the uncertain stuff. The economic impacts were a little bit tough, as the design of the program at its current state is not designed for economic impacts, but there are some. So we wanted to investigate what does that look like. Looking at the financial impacts, 40%. Sorry, 40%. We're not sure if they generated more income because of the program. The operational costs. While there were some members who said that they saved significant amount of money, operational costs were quite difficult because only 10% actually were able to realize and to track what was happening. So it's an important aspect as well. This is very particular to the different operators and how they're able to track their methods, track their costs, track their usage. What metrics do they use to consider staff implications as well? The beneficial impacts, branding, big, very consistent from the previous research and then this research. It averages around 90% every time. They believe that it really helps promote their dive centers. It shows that they're willing and committed to do the right thing to support the ecosystem. And in part, piggybacking off of the branding, 60% of the operators believe that they're able to attract better customers and more customers because they are greenfin builders. The environmental impacts, looking at the uncertain impacts, the hub. Again, the hub is quite polarizing here. It's literally 50%. This speaks to an interesting dynamic between the members. The hub is seen as beneficial for about 50%, but then also not so helpful for another significant portion, about half. So the beneficial environmental impacts. I don't know if I would believe this if I hadn't actually done the research myself, but 100% believe that they have a reduction in adverse diving impacts. The reason I say that is because when you get 100%, it's usually something interesting going on there. But there was consistent metrics between this and other research that was conducted that shows it consistently proves that the dive operators that participate in greenfins are seeing the benefits of reducing harmful impacts because of the program. Again, 100% of the members believe that dive sites directly benefit from having greenfins members in the dive sites. And 90% believe that their members have improved because of their engagement with greenfins. So improve environmental practices for their staff. And waste reduction coming in at 60%. This is interesting as well. 60% believe that it is helpful. The greenfin program is helpful for reducing the waste management. And then speaking to the 10% previously about the environmental practices, there were some members who noted that they were already doing some of this good work. So they chose not to say it was helping. It doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't, but that's something worth acknowledging. If you had to guess what was the most important question, what do you think it would be? Let's take a second. What do you think it would be? The answer's there. It came out at 100%. For me, this really shows the benefits, the quality of this program. I asked them, did they think I was handsome? So of course, that was the answer. Actually, it was, would you recommend other dive centers to join greenfins? This says something a lot about the brand. This says something a lot about the quality. Despite maybe some of the nuances about not having an economic benefit as strong as they might imagine, this speaks loud. This is from digital members, certified members. This is from previous members. So even people who have left for whatever reason also agree that this is a good program and they enjoyed it and they would recommend to other members. And this goes for the international worldwide as well. So this is consistent. It's worth mentioning that the data from Indonesia is very consistent with the data from the entire world. Interesting points to note about the greenfins member feedback. There were many different versions of similar comments. So once I synthesized the comments, it came out to 4 main things. It was they would like to know or have more implementation, regular communication. They're interested to basically have more, if you look at all of them. They're interested in newsletters, success stories, building more on the community. And that actually goes back to the hub aspect where they were sharing their thoughts on how that worked. Enhanced language accessibility is something that comes up very often, which also is one of the reasons why I have such a text-heavy slides here. Language accessibility came up the most often, I think, when I was talking to different areas. So developing local champions, it doesn't necessarily mean they want you to go and develop local champions. They're actually saying that they want to get more involved. They were asking, how do I get more involved? They were asking, how do I volunteer to help you with translations, for example, and different things of that sort. And then recognizing members' achievements. They feel like they have a lot to share and they would like to see more of that. They would like the opportunity to do that more. One particular aspect that jumps to mind when I'm thinking about this was about the cultural impacts. In the beginning of the research, I actually did investigate cultural impacts, but it was quite anecdotal, so it was difficult to kind of put this into this impacts. But there are wonderful stories that are out there that each and every one of our members are doing and working with different communities that should be shared. So this is what everybody's probably waiting for. Free or fee? Spoiler alert, I'm not going to tell you my recommendations because I would like to have a robust conversation. And no one knows the right answer. But I'm providing you the data so that we can have a conversation about the steps forward or possible steps forward. So when we look at it, we're just looking at the different products and services just to get a quick overview. They fall into kind of three main boxes as I see it. This is not comprehensive of every single thing Greenfins does or Reef-World provides, but it is a good stepping point to look at a high level. So there's certifications, there's trainings and education, there's the online platforms and tools. As JJ has shared earlier, there's quite a bit of pre-existing activities, services, and products that are provided at no cost. So when you look through it, you can see that there's actually a majority of activities that are being done at no cost. And this speaks again to the nonprofit social mission of Greenfins, which is fantastic and very impactful. But there's other things to consider if we're looking at possible future opportunities. So if you take a second here, you can kind of imagine. We understand kind of how the Greenfin members had felt the impact, right? We understand how they feel about the services in general. But here they were asked, how would they rank what services we can do more or that they enjoy at this point to help them reach the sustainability goals in the future? So when they were asked this, you can see that the education materials, interestingly enough, was ranked first. And then the following ones, all the way down to 4, are all digital, actually. They're all digital opportunities. The bottom 2 being the assessment scheduling and the in-person training were the least requested in terms of reaching future sustainability goals. So this really speaks to the preferences and the changing dynamics of the different members. So we looked at the different products. We understand how they feel about the different products and the impact and the quality of what it gives. So what am I talking about here? If you bear with me, this is a way to look at how far you would like to go on the scale from a nonprofit to a profit business. This helps you kind of visualize the different steps. So on the far left, you'll see the social value. And this is more of a mission-driven. Income is not prioritized as much as the actual activity and the mission. That's more on the side of the traditional nonprofit. And as you move across the scale on the bottom here, you can see that nonprofits start generating income. So actually, Reef-World is already there. So the Greenfins program is already actively working towards becoming more sustainable, quite successfully actually as well. Another level would be sort of a social enterprise. And when you get into the middle, that's where you look at the challenge that Greenfins is currently managing. How do you manage the financial and then the social impact? How do you maintain your personal sustainability of the program while still serving as many people and giving as much impact as possible. So this is something to consider for the following discussions. The next few slides will also consider these. Other things to think about. The Greenfins program is really underpinned by its assessors and their ability to communicate and work with the communities and these experts that are all over the world. And we look here and we can see that there's a need to sort of work with the assessors to encourage them to be more engaged. And that's something we're investing in time and effort to figure out how to keep you guys more engaged with the program. Some interesting news, some exciting news. When you look at the marketing and education materials, which was also noted as one of the highly regarded services and products, right? It's actually quite impactful, looking at over 400,000 downloads since 2020. And then the amount of languages is available is in 18. And then just the total amount of education that's given out for free. What I would like to highlight, though, is if you look at the languages, currently, a lot of our education programs, the e-courses are only available in English. But if you look at the portion of English when you look at the downloads, this indicates that there's a larger market that may or may not be served at this point. So, in summary, is the Greenfins products and services a viable business opportunity? Yes. Yes, but there is a caveat. If you look at the service membership assessment services, so that's doing the assessments in the ground, there is some need to sort of reorganize and transform how that works to become more sustainable, to provide more benefits to the assessors on the ground. There is a need to sort of continuously review membership and retention rates, as we've had so many members join at a certain point, but some of them drop off. So we want to know why they're dropping off. We also want to know what we can do for the assessors in order for them to support them. There's definitely high demand. We are consistently unable to reach the demand for assessments. So there's a need also probably to increase our ability to reach more people, whether that's online or in person. This is something worth considering. And then in general, when you look at the other points, the 19 points that I didn't go into, many of them are already able to be packaged and monetized or optimized. It's not all about finance, but there are many opportunities to add more value. So when I talk about optimizing and monetizing, what I'm talking about is also adding more value. It's not just putting a price tag on something that's old. And thank you. That's done.
Thank you very much, Chris. And question mark. It is not yet the end. It's only maybe the beginning. So I will invite JJ and Chris to be ready. We are going into a discussion, and very important to note that we are multicultural, multi-country in this exchange today. Mostly the findings, the findings that Chris presented was from the Indonesia-based surveys, but we also have some responses globally that's also analyzed. Also, so yeah, the context for Indonesia is, of course, different from the context in the Philippines, in Malaysia, Japan, and Thailand, and the other countries that are possibly tuning in now online. So a lot to process. I hope and I hope some are meaningful. I see some people taking pictures of the slides. So I guess to start this discussion, I will give you a prompt question to think about. So very briefly, 30 seconds, breathe in, breathe out. After all those two presentations, what piece of information really caught your attention? Something that maybe gave you a, your heart skipped a beat. Or maybe your eyebrow raised. Or maybe you knocked on the table. Something that I agree with. Or maybe something like, I want to know more about what that particular statement was about, both from JJ's and Chris's presentations. That's my prompt question. I give you 30 seconds to briefly think about it or feel about it. Also inviting our online attendees to share online via Zoom. Now we're required to answer one by one, beginning, just kidding. It's, of course, volunteers. Do we have volunteers? Maybe three before we go to the questions. And by the way, if you have specific questions, please be ready and we'll entertain. But yes, from Raymond from.
Yeah, thank you. Just curious when you said 100% of the respondents said that they will recommend Greenfins to everyone, even though they did not renew their membership. Did you probe to them like, okay, so like if you recommend this to anyone, like why didn't you renew? Like what will be their consideration for not renewing their membership? Just curious.
Shall I? Yeah. Thank you, Raymond. That was a fantastic question. That was actually quite interesting. So in that particular survey, we had left a space for feedback from the former members. And it's quite interesting. It was a mix. There was a few I could remember. Actually, one said they didn't realize they had to renew. There was another one or two that said that they didn't have time to schedule. There was another member that said that the management changed within their organization and the new management wasn't interested. So it was quite a mix. There wasn't really any hard feedback or negative feelings towards it. The hardest feedback was probably someone who mentioned that they weren't excited to be given the score that they got, but they still recommended that it was a valuable experience for them to be part of Greenfield.
Is that what you said?
It's not that they didn't agree with the scoring result, they were disappointed. So they were demotivated. That's how they explained it.
Thank you. Oh, I got a lot of hands coming up. Rani, please introduce yourself. Sorry, to grab that. Yeah, just very briefly because we have other people listening in, and of course you are just be aware that people are listening in. But these are all assessors from other countries. Okay, so it's not public, but it's within our close network. So please introduce very briefly your sector. Yeah, Rani.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and also good morning, everyone in online, joining online. My name is Rani. I'm representing the Indonesia Dive Tourism Company Association. So our member is basically dive operator and dive centers. One thing that come up in my mind and it's like, wow, it need a lot of work. Monetizing. So after JJ presentation, what Chris present is already in my mind, but the question is how flexible and how agile the organization to change the business model, because it's like quite like a deja vu that NGOs stuck in the funding program, or which actually they have a good product, they do a lot of good work in the field, but cannot monetizing and cannot do more with the service and the product because of the what you call it, the term of funding itself. Well, if you go outside, like what Chris just explained, there's quite a lot of social enterprise, also the for benefit company, sort of like that. Even if we derive again what kind of social enterprise, that's quite a lot of model like circular economy, one-to-one, hybrid model, something like that, cross-subsidized, something like that. It's quite a lot of option to explore, but the question again, how the organization can flexible to do that. And if the organization have opportunity to do that, I think it will be benefit also for the business sector. So we can work together like for create more profit or more sale. That is in my mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Rennie. That's a wonderful question. JJ would like to answer this.
And so to answer the question of flexibility, it's not a simple yes or no. There is a lot that we do have flexibility with in terms of charging, in terms of putting a cost to certain services. We work obviously very closely with the United Nations Environment Programme and Reef-World made the decision on this, and we both have to move forwards together on this in agreement. There are things which they just cannot allow. For instance, a simple one is anything with the UNEP logo or any UN department logo cannot be used to make a profit, kind of for obvious reasons. But there are things which we can do, and you'll see like the e-courses, for example, a primary example of that. Merchandise is something which we haven't had a big focus on for a long time, but it is something we could charge for. Again, with downloads, we could charge for it, but again, we have to show it has the environmental impact associated with doing so. And as long as we have that argument behind it, then in terms of flexibility, then yes, we can. We are all the decision makers here, and I think if everyone voted for the same thing from national teams, governments and NGOs, if they were all in agreement, we'd have a very good case to put forward to the UN, then it wouldn't be too difficult. So in terms of flexibility, yes, but it's not just down to the UN and us. It's also down to the implementing partners, both new and there's more established national teams as well. And the money flow could be a problem. It's very difficult, for example, for Reef-World to pay to a government department to implement green fins. You know, the funding raised wouldn't just be for Reef-World activities. It will also be for on-the-ground activities, which is critical for sustainability moving forwards. NGOs, a lot more flexibility, a lot more freedom. So it's just trying to work out those sort of technical things first, making sure we've got the moral aspect right. You know, we can't have everything behind a paywall, but flexibility, yes, there is flexibility.
Thank you, JJ. And two things to note here that we would like to emphasize as well as a group. There's Reef-World, of course, in general governance of the standards internationally, but then important, of course, our assessor teams on the ground, your activities. So we're looking at both income generation or revenue streams, or whatever we will call them, financing mechanisms to be able to address the challenges that you actually all have raised. With different models, of course, different contexts, different scenarios. But good question. And also, second one is I probably forgot. So I'm just gonna go to the next question. I think Ibrili, would you like to? Yes.
Thank you. My name is Rili Johani. I'm the director for the Coral Triangle Center based in Bali. I just want to congratulate first the two speakers. I thought they were very interesting and comprehensive presentations, and fascinating to see the journey of the Greenfins program and the Reef-World Foundation since 2004 until 2025. So it's almost 20 years or more than 20 years already. And I think it was a great journey to see how it evolved. And so many countries are now involved in this as well. And Chris, also, I think your research was very comprehensive and very clear. Thanks so much. And I guess my question, because I really was interested to see the business model and also took a photo of that. And I guess also based on our own experience, one should charge actually for certain services. The assumption is that people would be willing to pay, but we saw that actually quite a quick drop in the interest for these products or services because they're so used to have it free. And I think the question is also to what extent we need to achieve sustainability on the expense of accessibility of information for the group that you like to reach out to. And so I think there's always a need for, some funds that can support that type of work with that mission, but also charge very targetedly what could be a good source of income. But a diversified business portfolio, I think, is still a combination of grants and income generating products. So thank you.
JJ, like,
Just to add to that, I completely agree with you. And I think when we're looking at charging, and that the first thing everyone jumps to mind is the membership fee. And it wouldn't all be dependent on just the membership fee. We have to look at lots of different areas where we could get different funding. So we will still continue with grants. We wouldn't drop that at all. But the reliability and dependency on them is a hindrance at the moment. So that's why we need to diversify. In terms of membership, members being more invested when they pay, absolutely is the case. When someone pays for something, they're more likely to value it and return to it. And I think that has been a bit of a psychological issue that has held Greenfin's membership back to some degree. I think getting the price point right for membership is critical. And I think that's going to be a real struggle, because how do we do that with different countries, around the world in terms of, different GDPs on it? When you're looking at the program from a global point of view, it's very difficult. With digital membership, it was quite easy to start with a very low price point and just have that as a standard internationally. But then how do we move forwards from here? So again, very open to ideas and suggestions and stuff, but yeah, well, let's see.
thank you, JJ. Actually, we do have a session. One moment, sir. We do have next discussion sessions. This is exactly what we're going to talk about. Nothing is definitive. That was in terms of like the future, and we appreciate your input in this consultative process. So I can see more eagerness, but I think Chris would like to respond as well. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for a great question, and highlighting the fact that it's not a perfect science when you have the potential for a new program. If it was that easy, everyone would have a social business that works. You're actually working against two things. You have a business, which more often than not fails, and then you also have a social agenda, which is difficult enough. I think when we designed it, when I designed the research, I considered the capacity in terms of the team and the partners, and what does that look like for the bandwidth. I also considered some metrics that we didn't have here, but for example, the drop-off rate between members who pay versus members who don't pay. And they were almost exactly the same. They were literally exactly the same. So that gives us confidence to believe that the price point is at a low enough point that it's comfortable for the dive members. Also, to add to a previous question was, the design of our program is not to be confused with one that wants to make a big profit at this moment, right? It's not about we're going to start making money by doing what we used to do as a nonprofit. The point is, how can we get enough income to manage the sustainability? So that allows us to have a flexible price point that's I believe is fair for everyone, and also empowers the local actors here to also start being a bit more empowered to take on initiatives because they know they can generate income. That's the vision that I put that out there with. So I hope that helps.
Thank you so much, Chris. I'd just like to recognize the lady at the back. She has been raising her hand since the beginning of the Q&A. Please introduce yourself for the context of everyone. Wonderful questions, by the way. Keep them going.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sri. I'm working for Ministry of Forestry in Indonesia, particularly the Biodiversity Conservation Management Division, specifically on ecosystem services utilization. So we are dealing very closely with authority on the ground, such as national parks and BKSDA. I don't know if it's a Biodiversity Conservation Agency in every province in Indonesia. So we have more than 70 offices throughout Indonesia, including 7 marine national parks such as Komodo, Bunaken, and Wakatobi, etc. Now Raja Ampat belongs to KKP, unfortunately, but used to be, we manage Raja Ampat as well anyway. So I would like to ask about, I'm sorry if 3 questions too much, but sorry, I will go very fast. So first question is about I'm sorry if I missed the explanation by Mr. JJ about the scholarship. Is it about the IFIC course scholarship? The scholarship that you mentioned on your presentation previously, is it about diving course or something?
This is, I think it was a bit for the access to the e-course. So we do charge for it, but we also have a scholarship fund for those who are unable to pay for, I think it was $25 for access to the course. So yes, we do have a scholarship. That's something we would like to sort of double down on as well.
Yeah,
And it is something which we're thinking about in terms of, maybe you're going to suggest it in terms of keeping that access available for smaller operations. If we do end up putting a charge on certified membership, a scholarship system that could be in place to be able to cover the costs.
Oh, okay. Well, I just thought that it was like a diving course for. I'm interested to ask more about that because we also have staff in Marine National Park that they are needed to improve their capability and skill in order to execute their tasks very well in the field, something like that. So I would like to ask that, is it they are also eligible for that? But then, okay, I will learn more about
That's
that
not for
soon.
us, but there are at least 3, if not more, training agencies in this
Okay,
room who I
okay.
suggest you speak
Sorry.
with.
Okay, thank you for your confirmation about that. And second question is about the funding. So does Greenfins also provide like financial or funding for conservation?
Only specific to the Greenfins initiative, and it comes from Reef Worlds
Yeah, yes.
through the grants that we.
Ah,
So, for example, this workshop is being funded by IUCN, and portions of that funding are going to our stakeholders who are implementing the program. And it's the same with different funding pots that we get. It comes through the Reef-World Foundation to the organizations on the ground or directly to our implementing partners as well.
Okay, so because Indonesian government now, we have a huge gap to fund our conservation activities. So we really need support from non-government such as other institution, funding donors, philanthropy, etc. So I think it is a great opportunity for us if we can like linkage our funding source. Now, Indonesia has already some instruments, tools for collecting co-finance or funding from everywhere that is following in the corridor of our regulation. We have what we call a BPDLH. It's in English, Pak Martin, could you help? Yeah, we have this institution, BPDLH, it's under Finance Ministry. So it manage all the funding comes from non-government funding, and it is great if we can also use this chance. But as you mentioned, maybe we can also use the channel for like a IUCN or sorry, UNEP, you said, and so or report, for example. So that's what I want to learn more, how to connect that with those, especially report, of course, because IUCN or UNEP, we have already have a cooperation as well for so long. And the third question.
Well, let me answer it now
All
before I
right.
forget. But I think this is great because what you're doing is you're touching on the technical aspects of implementing a membership fee charge. And it's one of our biggest concerns. How would we do this in each country? You know, I think very much about the Philippines and Thailand, who are solely behind green fins in the country. Is there a system in place in the Philippines to be able to collect the membership fees, for example, and Thailand, rather than it going externally and then going into the government, which I don't think is even an option. So it's important that we need to get this right. But it's also important that we have, this is, again, it's not putting all our eggs in one basket. It's just a supplementary income to the bigger picture of things. And this is what we need to look at on every country and how that works on a global scale, because grants and traditional grant funding won't go away. There'll always be a need for it, as you mentioned, working with external grantors.
Okay, thank you. But I forgot what the
Can,
third question. So
we
maybe
can
I-
we will have opportunities to ask more questions. Sorry, I have to cut.
No worries. Thank
But you
you.
can write it down. We will. I have 2 last questions on in person and 1 online or a comment online. Let's please provide Pak Martin the time now.
Yeah, thank you. From the presentation and also based on my experience, our experience to running green fins in Indonesia, indeed green fin is necessary, important, and then now we need to expand, scaling up, and also financing support to do that. In other side, the green fin is like JJ said that this is also has like UNEP logo, so we cannot do for-profit activities and something like that. And then now we are talking about the how we develop business model for the green fins. But my question is, did the green fins has developed? I mean, did the green fins develop the business plan for like long term, maybe 15 years? How much money do we need? And then in yearly, because, and then also what for the cost component itself? Because if we break down the cost component, maybe this is not only about funding, about money, but this is in kind, this is just need to channeling into the existing mechanism that can be reduced that cost and money itself. Like we know there is a government mechanism, there is a private sector mechanism, and we need to channeling that. But if we have clear how much money do we need in long term, for example, and then what is cost component that used for that money, I think that's easier for us rather to talk with donors, with the partners in terms of supporting the financing for the green fins program. Yeah, that's my question.
I would say in terms of a business plan, we're at that early stages of developing that. And I think we need to know which direction we're going to go in before we can look at developing a business plan. Because at the moment, I mean, we could do it on a current situation of how the system is set up with free membership for certified and charging for digital membership. But I think moving forwards, if we are going to start looking at these other sources, that changes things dramatically. And so creating a business plan for running the cost of green fins internationally changes. So we're wanting to, and that is, I completely agree with you. We need to know where we're going in order to try and reach out for support and get there. It's really difficult trying to get a number for running green. And when you say running green fins, there's the Reef-World charity running the charity costs, the typical overheads, maintenance costs for just ticking things over for membership. But then there's growth and expansion. And that's not even looking at the cost of Greenfin's implementation in country, not including any Reef-World staff. And I think that's something we'll have to work with every country where we have active operations, and those countries that need to revive and bring it back up again. For example, like the Maldives, with a lot of work's gone on there in the past, that's completely on hiatus at the moment. And this year they're looking to start it up again. And they are doing exactly that. They're looking to see what it will cost to send their assessors to the islands to conduct the training and the assessments and stuff. But the cost varies wildly around the world. So it's a difficult thing to look at. Dev, you want to add to this?
I was just going to say that this is the entire process that we're taking on right now. But I'm also just going to say we have a time limit of 11:10. Don't worry, we have so much time later. In fact, I'm wondering how to ask for, but I think I don't need to prompt you more questions because you still have a lot to say. I will just allow Anders first to speak. And then somebody online, and then Chris and JJ can respond. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll try to be short. First of all, I want to echo your sentiment that thank you for the presentation, both of you. I think it was extremely interesting and good to learn the history and the progression that Green Fins has made. I had a long list of things, but I don't want to go into all of them. But one thing you mentioned was that the green fins is undervalued, and maybe that's a starting point for also for everything else. So And another thing you mentioned was the transboundary aspects. Sorry, by the way, I'm from the South China Sea project, a UNEP project. So having the UNEP hat on together with Mavi. So I think the interesting aspect here from our perspective is also that we are working at the large ecosystem scale, and you're working really down at the local level with dive operators. So how can we bring these processes together? I think that's also something that can contribute to maybe getting the value of greenfins known better. So we have a short time left. We have 2 years left. So, but COBSEA hopefully can continue, and UNEP obviously will stay here for a long time. So this is one of the things where we are. I'm also very keen to support whatever we can in the coming 2 years to make green fins better known and better valued. You mentioned there's many fish in the sea, and they are not there in isolation. They're all connected. So we have to connect the scales. I think that's an important aspect of this, connecting the local with the local communities, with the local governments, with the national governments, with the large ecosystem aspects. And I believe now that you've operated quite a while now, you're creating a lot of data also. I wonder whether that can be used to, for example, identify some of the transboundary benefits that green fins provide, because that's our perspective is also transboundary. So maybe that's an area where we can support and we can collaborate. I hope over the next few years to bring the value of green fins or making that better known. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Anders.
Yeah, a lot of points. I completely agree with all your sentiments. I think that the first thing to note with the awareness, getting it out there, is that there is no marketing budget at all. And I think this is one of the faults with NGOs, charities, is that they don't think in terms of more of a business, of a for-profit setup. And marketing is one of those things which should be there, but isn't. As I said, we, as in our charity, is 90% grant funded. You can't apply for a grant to ask for marketing, to put it out there. Even just trying to get the grant to cover staff time is difficult sometimes. So it's this is again another reason why we need to diversify and look for additional funding, so we can have a marketing and a branding and awareness team. We do an awful amount in terms of social media and communications, but it's not from a point of view of deliberately going out there to try and increase the number of members in the same way that a for-profit organization probably does. But we should learn from that, learn from those different models. And I think it was on your slide, we're on that phase in between the two, and that's one of the key aspects that's been highlighted a few times. But yes, thank you. Yeah, we do have an enormous amount of data, and we're only just scratching the surface of how to analyze that now. But there's a lot more tools and stuff, and Sam's behind a lot of this as well. But yes, we do need to. We've created some incredible mechanisms to feed that data back to government, but we're not necessarily using it on a regional level. But let me come back to you afterwards, because yeah, there's definitely something we can do there with the data for sure.
Our last question from somebody online. Oh, we can see you now. Hi, AE from Thailand. Somebody involved in the program. I think it would also be Chris that would be responding first to this question. Go ahead, AE, please.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. So I'm A from Greenfin Thailand. I joined the Greenfin since the beginnings. So in my opinions about the sustainable financings, in the past, Thailand governments, as a DMCR, Departments of Marine and Coastal Resources, implement the Greenfin since 2004 until now. But the budget, the annual budget is on and off. It's not every year. So we struggle on the finance for the assessor, right? Who do the voluntary work, same as me, right? So in my opinion, I think at the country levels, so we could, I agree to to have like the membership fees if possible. If that country is possible and ready and have the mechanism to collect the annual fees, right? This is will support the assessor to do the work. For the global levels, I think about the green bonds, but I'm not expert on that. But I think if the green bonds or like sustainability linked bonds can help to do the sustainable financing for the greenfin as a long term. As I know, ADB created blue bonds, right, in 2021. So I think this channel is a possibility for the greenfins in the future. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining, eh? Yeah, Chris, I think you probably want to take this one, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the wonderful insight. I think it's worth really looking at and imagining while we're in this room with all these different stakeholders and we have everybody online to imagine what would it look like if we wanted to, or how could we support the local assessors to become more sustainable so that you're not dependent on any one source. I think blended finance, as it was mentioned in this room before, and as you mentioned again, is definitely part of the puzzle. We're not looking to be, at this moment, a fully profit sort of organization or ever probably, but I don't think it's unrealistic to say that having assessment fees in the future doesn't make sense. It's different models in different countries work. Using that sort of model. Maybe JJ, you would like to talk on how that looks in different countries, or?
I'm not sure we're there yet.
Well, so there are different models in different countries, different levels of support from government. And these models are developed specifically to fit the needs in that country. So what we're talking about right now is we're using Indonesia as a model to figure out what works here, what works best for our local partners, what works best for our local private sector teams. We believe that this model is applicable to many different countries, but again, for the Thailand sort of context, you would have to look at how much you would want to work with or rely on different stakeholders so that you can maintain that sort of sustainability. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, JJ. Would you like to add additional comment? But it's also interesting that in the Philippines, for example, the implementation is within the government's work plan and budget. We will talk more about that later, though. And I already sent questions in advance for Greg. I'm really sorry. I have to cut this discussion unless JJ like say, okay. Thank you, everyone. Please give a round of applause to not only our speakers, but to you all. Amazing. I would like to say that this room is so energized. I mean, might not look like it, but I think I can see your brain waves. Because so many of us here, colleagues in the room and online, are coming from the nonprofit and the public sector. But we do have a lot of private sector voices as well. So this is such something that is happening not just in this room, but even in Bali Ocean Days. A lot of these models are now being asked of business models of potential, and actually sustainable financing is really defined as like market-based instruments in equity loans, something that some nonprofit colleagues of ours do not actually have any training on. So this is quite a global call with the funding cuts that we see from time to time, but we also understand that government allocation is also something that we want. Government buy-in means putting money where our mouth is, right? So these are all amazing insights, and we really appreciate and believe that we are all in this together. Greenfins, again, is not an organization. It is coordinated by Reef-World internationally, again, governance of the standards, but the local implementation is really with the stakeholders on the ground. So with that, let's eat 15 minutes, and then we'll resume for another round of facilitated exchange. Please enjoy the snacks. Online participants really would love to contribute so they can see this perspective. So if you please have a question later or sharing, if you're not on this table in the middle, we invite you to kindly step up here at this corner of the room and then share your thoughts. Are you excited for the next part? Yeah. Do you wonder what it would be? So let me introduce the learning exchange. No, actually, Coral Triangle Center, since Valley Ocean days, I heard learning exchange. I was really interested. Oh, what's their method? This is also something that we believe is very valuable. Um, and MEL, if you are all doing the project monitoring, evaluation, and learning, the learning aspect is, usually the most recent methodologies apply there. How are we learning? How are we applying that learning? And this is something for us, this also means data-driven, data-driven learning, meaning what are we seeing from the trends that we're looking at? So I have the wonderful task that made me think all night on how to properly conduct this learning exchange, especially with different languages. So give me a moment, sorry. So I begin with our just setting up this space, okay? How are we learning from each other in the next 1 to 2 hours? Okay, may I request attention for those who are willing to participate, including our online participants. Number one, we listen to understand. So listening is definitely very important here. You've already been doing it, great job. But I just like to emphasize that this is a consultative process. Okay, this is a consultation with different perspectives. We have a mix of participants, so we respect that experiences are in every country either are diverse and unique. So meaning, you know, when somebody shares from their perspective, we do not, especially if we're not from that country, we do not need to respond to it or to how do you call this, disagree with it, because obviously if you're not from that location, you probably won't have enough context. Number three is we enable an inclusive and safe space. All right. So meaning if you have concerns about what you're going to say, like if you feel like you don't want this communicated, you can proceed to me, like you can write it down, you can discuss it. Like some people have approached different parts of the different members of the team earlier and discussed some questions that they wanted clarity on. And then last is, well, not last, so we invite creativity and innovation. So this learning exchange is also going to ask more ideas. Remember the financing column on your work on road mapping yesterday? We'll try to be more creative and think out of the box. Let's see where it gets us. Number five is that we aspire to be solutions oriented and future proof. I think many people in this room are aware of the challenges of implementation in Indonesia for our stakeholders, as you've seen in the last 2 days, but also in your own country. So also being forward thinking and focus more on what we can do in the future, with all of the trends in terms of grant finance funding, public government allocations. We need to think about that. So this is my question now. Can you please let us know if you agree to this social contract for the next 1 to 2 hours? If you have any issue with our rules of engagement, you may leave the room. Just kidding. No, you can still, that is not inclusivity. So you can approach me in the facilitation. And by the way, how's my driving so far? Are you okay with my facilitation? Also open to feedback. How's the food? Good? Okay. All right. So just a review. I am going to the next slide. So earlier you saw some metrics. So this is something that we just like to look at right now. There are 15 countries that we've reached with assessor training, but right now 7 countries are currently doing assessments. Okay, so this means that there's some drop-offs, and we talked about retention rates. Right, I think from the last report, we have 374. So we can see if you're an assessor, you know that after 1 year, this member drops off the count. And that's why we cannot keep like a static number. It has to be live data every day. And then the next slide is JJ presented this earlier. This is something that you may not have seen before, but this is showing you what Greenfin's operations look like, both from the international level and the grassroots or ground level. So I'm going to go through it one by one because this is an important element of our learning exchange today. Let's start with the top, and you have a copy of it, by the way, on your table. Okay. So we looked at how we operated, and of course, also open to your feedback. Let's start with implementation at the very bottom. Okay, so when we say implementation in Greenfins, this is actually the on-the-ground recruitment of the marine tourism businesses. We have the assessments. We have the member support. So please raise your hand if you're currently involved with implementation or member assessments, dive center recruitment. Please raise your hand. And if you're not, it's okay. We just wanted to see in the room. Anyone who's involved in engaging dive centers for Greenfins, meaning talking to them, assessing them, please raise your hand. Okay. Thank you. So that's implementation. The next one is marketing and communication. So this is where we're looking at industry partnerships, talking about marketing and publicity, communications, about the program. So this is a mix, right? Reef-World does this, but I'm sure you also do this when you're on the ground or implementing it in your country. Please raise your hand if you're involved in marketing and communication for Greenfins as of the moment. Okay, not much. Thank you. Capacity building is the third component that we're breaking down here. This is where the trainings are for the assessors and the assessor trainers. This is also involving the awareness raising that we're doing for the industry and other stakeholders. Okay. You might see some overlaps, that's fine, but we, for the purpose of our discussion of the program, capacity building is when you're training people to be involved in Greenfins. Please raise your hand if you are actively. Thank you so much. All right. Okay, interesting next three. I love these three because these are sometimes not visible to everyone. The top is policy, legislation, and frameworks. So this is where we are looking at Greenfin's code of conduct as policy frameworks or policy insights, or they inform when we review our management of marine protected areas. We try to put Greenfins into the picture in terms of private sector engagement, in terms of tourism management, MPA management. Please raise your hand if you feel you're involved in policy, legislation, and frameworks. Amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, intelligence reporting. This is maybe a new term for some, but what we mean here is, remember we have assessment data on the back end, and it's about, by the way, it's like a treasure chest in there. We have not fully maximized intelligence reporting, but this is the analysis of the assessment scores, sometimes in the level of core of conduct points, and gaining insights from it. This is Sam's job in our team. But of course, this is interesting because, it's like sometimes it's very scientific or research, so we ask questions like, really, do we think that anchoring has reduced because their scores have reduced? So we are in the business as well of reporting this data or performance to governments, to United Nations, to other stakeholders, also the local stakeholders. So this is what we mean by intelligence reporting, and it can be linked to policy, legislation, frameworks. Please raise your hand if you feel like you're using Greenfin's assessment data to report environmental insights, especially in the dive sites that you work with. Martin, Suika, Albin, Greg, all of the national team leaders, Sam over there. Wonderful. So imagine the time that you're spending doing that, right? It's not just the assessments, but you're also analyzing the insights from the overall scores in the dive sites. The last one, digital infrastructure. This is something that you also might not have seen, but this is actually the development of the tech firm side of Greenfins, which is the Greenfins Hub. We've also heard feedback from the members about the usage of it. But this was born during the pandemic, right? And we saw e-courses being promoted here, of course, the digital memberships, the website listing of greenfins.net, also the bugs that come up and the new features that we need to add to the hub so that it's usable by the members, but also the assessors. Please raise your hand if you feel like you have a touch on digital infrastructure for Greenfins. Okay, so meaning you use or you have interest in this kind of platform. Okay, thank you. All right. Does anyone have questions about these 6 circles right now? Yeah. How about, do you think there's something that we do at Greenfins that is not captured in this 6 wheel? By the way, also invite Patty and also our training agencies to look at where you can have some insights as well. But I think it's also recruitment of members, which is implementation and marketing communication. All right. So now we will ask you to use this tool called Menti. It's online. You can use your phone if you're connected to the internet. But if you do not have access to the internet, please approach me or Sam over here. We can help you register your vote. So we are going to try to rate program components. Okay, just go to that slide. Ooh, we're testing this method for the first time, by the way, so. Huh? No, not yet, not yet. Okay. So what is the instruction? You will rate per component in terms of impact. What does impact mean? It's the delivery of your ecological and maybe socio-economic, that's what it says, should be socio-economic agenda or mandate. So what is this? This component has an impact on your work or the impact that you want to have in the world. So you rate it from 1 to 10. 10 being like, oh, this component is really impactful. This is something that should be done a lot, something like that. And then cost is where you think from your experience, the demand for financial and non-financial resources. We're talking about funding, but also we're talking about manpower, staff time, stuff like that. So also 0 to 10, 10 being very costly. It's very expensive to run this component. Is that okay for everyone? No issues? Okay. Anyway, if you have issues, you can always complain. So please go ahead, take your time, maybe 2 minutes. Thank you. And also, this is anonymous. We are not going to let you know who said something. They're all high cost, high impact so far. Okay. Now I have the difficult job to do. No, I can do this. We can do this. We can do this. Well, obviously, we don't want to tweak the results by looking at the results, but I think most of us are done anyway. Okay, now is the time for the learning exchange. Looking at this screen, and we have about how many responses did we get? Wow, 28 people. Okay, get ready because this is the forum part. We are seeing number 4 as the highest impact, highest cost. Obviously, these are the assessments. This is a certification. I think that's kind of expected. But what's the lowest so far? Lowest impact is looking like digital infrastructure and intelligence reporting. In terms of cost, it's also lowest intelligence reporting. And I think policies next, policy legislation frameworks. And then, yeah, capacity building is second in terms of cost and impact. Okay. Thank you for what do you say this? Validating some of our theories. Now, is the time to shine for our national team leaders or coordinators. So by the way, if you don't know, if you didn't notice, these are the people in this table from different countries, including Indonesia. So my first question that any one of you can answer. Oh, by the way, we don't need to look at the Menti now. So this, okay. In your experience, how did you incorporate these components? You know, and please think of them separate, right? How do you incorporate these components to your work plan and budget? Whether you're an NGO, government, so feel free to share what you can share or allowed to share. Greg, I think from the Philippines, everyone's so interested to hear this model. Please go ahead.
Hello. Yeah, Greek from the Philippines. How much time do I have?
Sige lang.
Yeah, so just to share how we incorporated the components or Green Fins initiative as a whole in our regular work planning and budgeting. So first, we adopted the Green Fins initiative as one of our approaches through a policy approved by our department or our ministry. And the strategy was elaborated through a memorandum of understanding. But this year it's subject for renewal. But it's a supplementary document that we have issued. And I think the one of the most important things also is we were able to incorporate green fins and its elements, its components to the logical framework of the national program we're implementing. We call it CMEP, the Coastal and Marine Ecosystems Management Program. So this program has a logical framework, and in the logical framework, we explicitly included green fins as one of its approaches, and its elements subsumed to other components of the program as well. For example, we have a behavior change program under that, the CMEP, where green fins is also included. We implement livelihood program as well under that program. And um, this livelihood program includes ecotourism activity. So in a way, green fins also contributes to or adds value to the implementation of the livelihood program. As a way forward, we are trying to mainstream as well green fins initiative in other sectors, in the programs of other sectors, like of course the tourism, and intensifying the green fins initiative to a joint administrative order. We call it joint administrative order with other sectors. And of course, we're keen on um, expanding more the green fins program with the with the given the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, the 30 by 30 targets, nature-based solutions, and so many concepts that are coming up now, the blue economy, etc. So I think that's what I can share for now.
Thank you, Greg. So you're basically aligning these to frameworks, for example, that the government agrees on. But can you elaborate further?
Sure.
Hotspot.
Okay.
Hot seat. How does that work in terms of staff time for government employees or assessors? Their staff time. How do you allocate people's time to do the assessments, and also the money that is needed for them to run the assessment, meaning going to the site, all that kind of expense.
Okay, so as I've said, there's a national program that has adopted green fins as one of its initiatives. So this national program, of course, has a corresponding budget provided by the government, and this budget is being distributed to our regional counterparts that implement green fins. We have 3 major sites in the Philippines that implement green fins. And in these sites, of course, we have regional counterparts, we have staff, and we allot portions of the national budget to these offices to implement green fins. And this, of course, would be part of their regular tasks, since it's part of the national priority, national program. And yeah, I think, did I answer
The
your
targets are
question?
basically aligned. So there's budget allocated
Yes.
basically.
And we account for these, of course, expenses to the Greenfin's accomplishments
And how often do you need to pitch this budget or to get this budget approved?
annually. So we propose Greenfin's budget, the cement budget annually, and we monitor this, yeah, quarterly, you know.
Thank you so much, Greg. Does anyone have questions about? Yes, please. Can we use this mic? Thank you.
Thanks. Yes. So thank you. That's a great lesson learned from the Philippines. Quick question. When you say, so I think having the green fins adopted by the government is like everyone's dream kind of things, right? So that's the kudos to the Philippines. My question is, when you say like implement the green fins program, does it somehow also, does it, do you make the green fins mandatory or for the dive centers, so it can be also have impact on the recruitment side of the members?
Yeah. Well, to be transparent, that's what our managers want. They want they want Greenfins to be mandatory, but Greenfins is voluntary in nature. So for now, we're not yet implementing that mandatory, but at least right now we're trying to since our turf our office's turf is within the marine protected areas, the legislated marine protected areas. So at least there, we want to require dive shops that utilize resources from the marine protected areas to adopt environmentally friendly diving practices, but not necessarily the green fins assessments because that is resource heavy, if I could say. At least for now, what we're trying to do is to have the local governments, marine protected areas, adopt maybe through a resolution, local governance, what do you call it? Local government ordinances to adopt environmentally friendly diving and snorkeling practices. Since, well, that should they should be doing that because they're utilizing resources from the marine protected area. So that's at least what we want mandatory for now.
Anyone else who has questions for the Philippines implementation? None? Oh, go ahead, Rennie. We need you to exercise because you just had snacks. And we're going to have lunch right after this as well.
My question is, of course, related to the business sector. How the involvement of the business sector in that process? I mean, how do you engage with the government first, or do you engage with the business sector also? Thank you.
Okay, so I'm I'm already from the government. So for dive establishments that utilize resources from marine protected areas, there's this what we call a protected area management board that govern the whole protected area, and members of the protected area management board or PAMB, that includes a representative from the diving establishment, maybe a president of an association that puts forward what their needs, their issues may be that the protected area management board should address. So that's one involvement of the diving establishment. For the sites outside the protected areas, we have our regional counterparts, our Greenfins focal persons in the regions are also engaged with the dive establishments directly. Yeah. So because of the annual assessments.
So, Greg, we have a question on it. Just if there was something to improve, though, in the green fins
Okay.
implementation in the Philippines, where would that be? Looking also back at the components, where do you think everything is being done by green fins Philippines?
Yeah, I think there's more work to do. I'm not sure if this is related with the business model discussion. I'm not a business person, but I think what the Philippines specifically has to work on is for us to come up with a clear guidelines, a menu or a portfolio of activities that external funders can support. I think for the Philippines, we have a lot of potential funders in terms of conservation activities, but we need more help to make this more programmatic. Like, what are the opportunities, the funding opportunities for the funders? Do we have a menu? we do not have yet, yeah, we can offer them to fund greenfields assessment trainings or food and accommodations, but on like yeah, or the assessments, but I think we have to be more programmatic about this, and we also have to identify opportunities for cost substitutes in the future. For example, rather than, for example, Emma and Sam going to different sites to train, if we train a national uh, Filipino assessor trainers, maybe he or she can just augment for training. And we do not just search for funding basically, but we also look out for more augmentation in human resource. So we're trying to engage more NGO partners. We're looking into engaging more NGO partners, seeking help from foreign assisted projects, and further mainstreaming coastal and marine conservation initiatives in local government units. We know that local government units in the Philippines has so many plans mandated for them to come up with, to do, but we're trying to mainstream biodiversity elements now in local development plans so that they will have a better valuing or understanding, appreciation of conservation initiatives, especially like Greenfin. So I think, yeah, that's it for me for
Thank
now.
you, Greg. And Queen, your colleague from our online participant says, I would like to back up Greek's statement that our leaders in the DNR, or the Ministry of the Department of Environment, wanted to have Greenfin's membership to be mandatory, but it's kind of a challenge for us assessors.
Yeah.
Challenge because it's demand, no, for capacity.
Yes. Since yeah, Greenfins is voluntary in nature, so they're wary of the sustainability on that part. So they want Greenfins to be mandatory, but yeah, it's still subject for further discussion.
Thank you, thank you. And Greg is, by the way, still around until the afternoon, so please talk to him if you have a specific interest on anything that the Philippines is doing. Now let's move on. Are we ready? Good so far still, everyone? Okay, Greenfins Malaysia, implemented by an NGO this time, like in here in Indonesia, Reef Check Malaysia. So, Greg, my question to you is, sorry, not Greg, Alvin. Alvin, I guess the same question. Yes.
Okay, so just a little bit of background before that. Greenfins, when it was first introduced to Malaysia, it was parked under the government, the Department of Fisheries Malaysia. But in 2014, my wife, myself, and another colleague from Reef Check Malaysia were trained as assessors because we wanted to start doing assessments around the country. This was in 2014, right? But a few years into, and back then, it was completely funded and supported by the Department of Marine Parks. But a few years into the program, there was a big political shift, change, and the department was no longer a department. So there was suddenly a cut for all funding, right? So we were stuck and we were like, what are we going to do? We've got these people who've been working hard towards achieving this, these standards all these years, and we can't just leave them out now. So it fell onto our lap to take it and run it. And for us, looking at your components, the biggest priority was put on implementation, right? So the biggest importance was to go out there and make sure all the members are assessed so that their membership is kept active. So that's where we started putting a lot of effort to get funding for and putting our staff out. We've got Greenfins in 6 locations around the country. Yeah. Now, other things like marketing, communication, that was piggybacked on things like the dive expos that we already did. Yeah, so we would use the dive expos as a platform. We would use Facebook, internet, social media, right? Capacity building was kept for strictly on a need basis, just because no money, right? So it was expensive to get the guys over from Reef-World to come down to Malaysia to do the training. So yeah, it was like when we really needed to add people, then we did capacity training. Policy, legislation, and framework, this again, we piggybacked on our sustainable tourism program, So besides green fins, we do the ASEAN Green Hotel Standards, we do eco-friendly snorkel guide assessments, certifications. So this was piggyback. So every time we talk to any government agency, any government department about sustainable tourism, Greenfins was pushed for diving. Yeah. Um, and intelligence reporting. Now, this was important to us to go to the government with facts, with numbers on to express why it's important, to promote it so that they would adopt it, and also for us to report back to our funders. So for Reef Check, all our funding comes either from, well, the majority of it comes from corporate sponsors or from grants. So that's how we use the intelligence reporting. Now, we haven't done much work when it comes to the digital infrastructure. We helped around with translation for materials, but that's about it when it comes to that component of the Greenfins.
Thank you, Alvin. Please, if you have any questions about how they implement, now is the time. But Alvin, you will have a new assessor training program. And by the way, Alvin didn't mention he's a trained trainer, meaning Malaysia can now train assessors, not necessarily having Reef-World staff go to the country. So you have 2 trainings coming up. Can you tell us how you got that financed, at least as a case study?
Yeah, so basically, we packaged it with the sustainable tourism efforts. So on different locations around the country now, wherever we have staff based on the island and they're running long-term programs, we have built it into the long-term funding, right? So when we go and ask a company or a funder for 5-year funding, it's sustainable tourism is already built in there, right? So, and thankfully this year we did get money to do not only in Peninsula, so we'll be able to do 1 training in Peninsula and 1 training in Sabah. So, yeah.
And to be clear, these are private funds, not public funds.
Yes, these are private funds. We do not get much in terms of public funds.
Thank you. Anything else that you can add to any lesson you've learned about fundraising for Greenfins in Malaysia?
So a big lesson we learned was, like, when we approached corporate just for Greenfins, very common, like very often they would go back and ask us, so who does this program benefit? And we'll be like, the dive centers, because they learn, but also the environment. They're like, yeah, but the dive centers get free training, get free materials, like, why are they not paying for it? Why am I paying for a business? You know, funders would be very happy to pay for our school program, for our surveys, for our reef rehabilitation, COSNet. But when it comes, they ask you, why am I funding a business that's making profit to get this? Why aren't they paying for their training? It's their staff that's getting the training. It's their business that's getting the marketing. Why am I paying for them? Right? So that's why we had to change the approach. And
how did you respond? Sorry.
Pardon?
How did you respond to
so
that?
So we parked it under the whole responsible tourism thing, right? We were like, look, the biggest risk to reefs in Peninsular Malaysia is tourism, right? Especially if we talk the big islands, Redang, Perhentian, Tioman, it's tourism. It's overdevelopment for tourism. It's tourism impacts. So we said, like, we need to address this. And the way we're going to address this is to use 3 approaches, which is the ASEAN Green Hotels, the Green Fins, and the snorkel guide training. So then it wasn't so much, it didn't stick out so much like, oh, this is a thing for dive centers, right? And so then companies were like, okay, we'll support this responsible tourism effort of yours.
Thank you so much, Alvin. But that's a really good point. Like private money, if we pitch assessments to be covered by another like corporation or individual giver, yes, that's I hope you heard that. They're asked, why are we paying for these businesses when they have the responsibility to certify themselves? But of course, there would be I think Greg also you would have the pushback, right, from the business sector. And I'm sure there are a lot of voices here that can add on later that, of course, this is also going to look like, in addition to the whatever taxes or tariffs or MPA fees, certification for the business can also be like, we will get pushback from that sector. Wonderful job you're doing in Malaysia, Alvin. And of course, it's not going to be without challenges. But later we will think more about how we can even engineer more solutions-oriented approaches to financing. Next on the list, assignments. Subika, are you willing to share? Okay, wonderful. Can you pass the mic, Subika? So this is Greenfins Japan. Same question. And by the way, I'm wondering if there are questions online. Not yet. Okay. All right.
Oh.
You want to read, Emma? Please. Should I? Before Suika, thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Emma, and I work at the Reef-World Foundation. So we have another comment from A from the Thai team joining virtually. So she says, well done, Alvin and Sue. Private partnership is a good model for sustainable financing, which which is a market system of sustainable tourism.
Thank you.
So some appreciation.
Thank you,
for
AE.
Alvin.
All right. Suika, we're very interested in Greenfins Japan, so you can also share a little bit more about your context. I know you already said yesterday, I think, that in Japan, for example, they're willing to pay. I don't know if that was a conversation in a forum. Oh yeah, in our small group in Japan, divers are willing to pay more for a Greenfins member, something like that. So any other information or experience that you can share in terms of running Greenfins in Japan would be very appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. I'm Suika from Japan. I work for two organizations, Japanese Diving and Web Media Company and General Incorporated Association, providing sustainability consulting and other services. My English is not good, so I apologize if I am off the mark and or difficult to understand. So in Japan, Greenfins has only been introduced in Onna Village, Okinawa Prefecture. Onna Village has a budget which is used to screen dive operators in Onna Village and for publicity and the promotional activities. At the time of its inspection, Onna Village reviewed a grant from the government as part of the Sustainable Community Development Plan. The budget for the next few years was funded by the Japanese hometown tax payment system scheme. Under this system, residents of one municipality receive special products and tourism programs in exchange for donation to other municipalities. Tourist destinations have this budget, which is used for these activities. Several other local governments are also interested in this project. Yakushima town is currently using its budget for introducing Greenfins, and we held information sessions for diving operators in the town last year and the before. Yakushima town also uses the budget from the hometown tax. It is difficult for local government to get budgets for the introducing of Greenfins alone. So proposals need to be combined with other plans. For example, one region is now trying to move forward with part of the creation of a tourist program to focus on inbound tourism. We have proposed to other local government to combine the introducing of a local law for creating places like MPS with introducing of Greenfins. But this has not yet worked. And we cannot operate without the budget of each local government at the moment. Therefore, we also need money for activities to expand the other local government. At the same time, we need to lobby the Ministry of the Environment. So we are currently trying to get a grant from the Nippon Foundation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And if you have the ability to search where Onna village is in Okinawa, you will see it's an amazing little island on the south of Japan. And as just to recap, it's not being implemented in everywhere in Japan, only in that particular village, diving village in Okinawa. Suika works for two private companies. So you said sustainability consulting, Suika? Your firm, your company is sustainability consulting, right? And also a media company. So there's a it's a very interesting mix. They're getting the money from local government, but they have to pitch it. And she said you cannot pitch Greenfins alone, has to be part of um, a bigger program, like what Alvin is saying. But also, it was an interesting thing. Suika mentioned some scheme of financing there that is somehow a public fund payment, but with a private sector source. Where's the money from? That is that tax money that you said scheme? There was a financing scheme that
Finance scheme in Japanese called Furusato Noze. It's hometown tax.
hometown tax. Oh, okay,
Uh,
okay, wonderful. Okay, is that interesting? Is that amazing information? Any more thoughts though, Suika? Do you have any more lessons that you've learned? You said you were applying, so basically for continued implementation in, oh, we were involved in that application for Nippon Foundation. Reef-World provided assistance, and it was going to expand the Green Fence program, Suika, right, outside of Okinawa, Okinawa-san. So you pitched it to Nippon Foundation. What are the lessons that you're learning when it comes to seeking finance?
mm,
Are there any more lessons that you learned?
uh,
You can answer later. Okay, thank you so much. Suika, let's give Suika a round of applause for. Okay, and yeah, so in terms of Greenfins Japan, for example, Greenfins implementation, their needs for our training, there is always a translator. If you're interested, so the translator also needs to be a diving or conservation kind of like expertise, right? Because so technical when they're providing assessment, when we're discussing Greenfins, basically, there's always going to be that one technical translator. Thank you. Our I mean, we've heard a lot from Indonesia, but Martin, maybe a question for you is any lessons that you've learned when it comes to running the program in terms of like financing it? We've already heard Dea speak in a webinar about your strategy of getting dive centers to pool together resources, but anything else or you can add to that, please? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Martin from Greenfins, Indonesia. As a background that CTC become national coordinator for Greenfin Indonesia in 2018. At the time, myself and Jaya over there, trained as a Greenfin assessor. And then after trains, become assessor, we are confused how to running this program because at the time there is no funding available to support running this program. And then by time, Jaya time and assessor time covered by the organization, the CTC, and then non-CTC staff, assessor is doing that voluntary. Yeah, and then this is running, and then because there is no budget support on that, we are thinking how we can implement this program. There are two strategies that we do to implement the Greenfin program in Indonesia. One puts this Greenfin program into our work plan at organization, so we at least can allocate a budget from CTC to support this program. And the second, we are thinking how to make this program running with low cost system. And then we are making a system by approach and talking with dive operators, so they can cover by themselves about the assessment cost. Yeah, so the organization paying our time, but the assessment cost is covered by dive operator itself. So when myself, for example, or Jaya or Dea doing assessment, the dive operator will pay our travel, our accommodation, and also diving and meals and so on. But we make a clear criteria indicator. Even when the dive operator is paying our assessment cost, this is will not bringing what, not influence on the score. Yeah, we still using the indicators, using the greenfin indicator. That's why if you heard that one of the Chris answer that the dive operators disappointed with the score. Yeah, even you pay for us
Lunch.
but still we use that criteria. Based on that, the score is
Yeah.
for that. But this is running well because with this system model, the greenfin program in Indonesia can be run by a very low cost program. Yeah, of course, beside our organization CTC doing fundraising to running this program. And then in terms of policy, our we are trying to connect the Greenfin program with the government program system, especially for the human resources development. We're trying to channeling assessor training of the Greenfin, because our imagination, if in each MPA Indonesia, there are more than 420 MPAs in Indonesia. If there is at least 2 assessor from the management unit become greenfin assessor, so they can assess by themselves in their respective MPA. That's why we would like to channeling into the human resources development of the government. That's the way we are working in the policy. And then the second, we are making MOU with the Bali province government and also with Maluku province government, and then putting the the greenfins implementation as part of the MOU to implement in the provincial level. With that way, we also trying to, that's the channeling with human resources development in the central government, but also trying with the local government in the provincial level. Yeah, Frankie. Yeah, I think that's what we do. And then for the recruitment and for the communication, I think we are now using a different way, using our website, social media, making event, and so on. And then for capacity building, we are conduct training with the assessment, along with assessment, but we do conduct training for making assessor training. We are doing fundraising and then making assessor training in Indonesia. And then last year, I think, together with Reef-World Foundation, myself and Jaya trained as an assessor trainer for Indonesia.
Yay.
So we can do in country like Alvin, we can conduct in-country assessor training in Indonesia with that way to increase or strengthen the capacity of the country to add more assessor in this country. Yeah. In terms of infrastructure digital, I think we are similar like Alvin said, that we are have to translate the material into bahasa, and then also we also always using the digital hub of the Greenfins, included the community forum. I think that's I can share related with the Greenfin Indonesia. Now we are in the process to try and connect this with the government policy and regulation, and then we put already Greenfins into the Indonesian MPA Vision 2030 and 2045. Yeah, that's all for that. Thank you.
Amazing. Round of applause for Indonesia. Martin, your optimistic view, when is your next assessor training program? I mean, your optimistic prediction. How will your next assessment training program happen? I mean, do you have any conversations about a government-funded assessor training program, for example?
Yeah, I think for the assessor training program is things that not too difficult to do, but one of the challenge is how very carefully and selected to choose the candidate for the assessor itself, because we have experience 2019, I think we conduct assessor training in Ambon, 8 assessor trained by us, and then only 2 now is still with us, and then 6 is disappear. Yeah, that's why. Yeah. This is very investment in one side, but we learn from there. Need to be careful to making selection on the candidate for the assessor. Yep. Yeah. This year or at least next year's we plan to have our assessor training. Yeah.
Right. And again, also seeing from your perspective, nonprofits seeking government funding, but aligning with the program. Like you said, MPA Vision 2030 Greenfins certification is already mentioned in an area of work there. So you're basically aligning that, and that's where you're financing most of your components. It's very clear. Last case study, and by the way, still open for questions. Are you still okay? Are you already hungry? Hungry? I'm hungry. I didn't get snacks. Okay, so we have 5 minutes left. But we will resume again at 2 p.m. Just our last learning exchange session, and then we will close. How's that? And also network and have conversations. Greenfins Thailand is represented by the Department of Marine Coastal Resources, and you have your floor. Thank you.
Okay. Today, I want to tell you about Greenfin Thailand. Back in 2004, United COBSEA started Greenfin project in Thailand, Philippines, and Indonesia. Our Marine and Coastal Resources Research Institute has been running to project since then, except during COVID time, when we had to stop for a while. We formed the Greenfin Working Committee in the November last year. Right now, we have 176 members in Thailand. Most of them are the Koh Tao, Surat Thani, Phuket, and Phang Nga. We have 2 types of members. First one, the digital member, they check themselves and pay fee every year. Second one is certificate member. Our staff go to check them, no need to pay fee. We use new system now with 3 level, gold, silver, bronze. Most of our members are silver level. In Koh Tao, we start checking dive shop since 2013. We see many good change. For example, dive boat now have tank to store waste water, and shop use eco-friendly cleaning products. The local government in Koh Tao like it very much. They want every dive shop to join Greenfin and get checked every year. Our team is still small. We have only 6 assessors. 3 can train other assessors, 3 are regular assessors. We also have working group 16 people helping us improve marine tourism standards under Greenfins. Tomorrow, DMCR will sign an MOU Phuket Provincial Government with Tourism Department and Sustainable Tourism Foundation. We will start special project in Phuket first to make diving more eco-friendly. First problem is the hard to work together with other organizations. Because of this, another problem is sometimes we cannot check members regularly. Also, we face big challenge because we don't have enough money to run program long term. And the biggest problem right now too, we need more assessors, 6 people, not enough for all the work. Even with this problem, we keep trying our best to help diving business protect our sea and coral reef. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for that effort. And you prepared the speech. I love it. I love it. Anyone from our online participants, there are other countries that are also doing assessments. So just so you know, your colleagues from Dominican Republic, Reef Check Dominican Republic, also not here in this room is what countries are we? Sorry, Emma. Emma is our senior programs officer. I have to rely on her for up-to-date information.
So, bearing in mind that it's a awkward time zone for some of our Greenfins countries, but we've had people register for virtually from Dominican Republic, Jordan, Egypt. I know that we have other attendees from Indonesia, Thailand, and Malaysia. I think that's everyone. I'm so apologies if I've missed anyone, but really appreciate it.
Thank you, Emma. And we can also hear more from them today in the afternoon. Egypt has an assessment fee system. We've discussed that in the webinar as well before this workshop. Then Jordan, the assessors are paid per assessment by a special economic zone authority. So it's like so it's a kind of a quasi-private government agency. Can we give each other a pat in the back? So good. I mean, yourselves, not each other. Yourselves. Woo! That was a morning of another day. What else do I need to announce? Can I ask the team if there's any more? CTC team, do you have any announcements as of the moment? Nope. Lunch is ready. Is that the announcement? Okay, lunch is ready. We will resume at 2 p.m. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good lunch. Okay. So just a quick rundown of what's going to happen this afternoon. Time now is 2:01. We have until 3 for my last method for getting more insights. Then we have 3 to 3:15. We will base it on the notes of the documentation. Just a quick wrap up and summary and next steps of what happens next. How are we processing the information that you're providing now? By the way, we're using, and I think we should be transparent, we are using artificial intelligence tools to analyze themes of this outcomes of these discussions. If you have any issues about us using AI or privacy of data, let us know. We can, Sam, our programs officer, the analyst, can take on your concerns and we can sorry, Sam, from the news, but no, but if you have like data privacy, if you have questions about it and how we use data or analyze data, Sam is here. And then we're gonna close. And then our networking, Emma, is still poolside. Okay. Up to you how there's some people bathing in swimming there in the swimming pool. But it's just a light just talking to each other, getting to know each other and saying goodbye. All right, are you guys ready? It's almost there. Almost there. Thank you. All right. So slide, please. Thank you. And hello to our online participants. Maybe we do a check-in very quickly. Can Erin hear me?
I can hear you.
Hi, Erin. Can we show Erin?
Hi, everyone.
And if everyone, if people on the call are still there, how many people do we have, Erin? Can you tell us?
I think we have 9 for now, but earlier we have 16 people joining.
Cool. And what countries again? Do we have?
We had Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, Jordan, Egypt, and Dominican Republic signed up.
Right.
Yeah.
By the way, this recording will also be accessible to national team leaders and coordinators so that they have an opportunity to react, to ask questions after the workshop or give us feedback. Also, Erin is our programs officer for digital community. She's the person, if you're the hub, Greenfin's Hub. She's the one voice that you always hear there. Erin?
Yes, that's right, Deb.
I love this. Okay. So the slide, thank you so much, Erin. We are now going into our interactive session 2. Please do not use Menti for people in this room. We want you to have a conversation in your table. For those who are doing online, you can use menti.com. All right. I'm now inviting everyone in this room. Now, after all the discussions we had this morning, by the way, I'm also hearing conversations. I'm hearing conversations outside of the session as well in the lunch meetings. I notice a lot of our Indonesian colleagues, they have side meetings, even sometimes outside the hotel in the lobby. So here's our exercise for today. We are going to imagine green fins being implemented with a mix of public and private funds. This has been discussed already before. Public means usually this is government funding, this is grants because they're paid for other governments, development work. Private funds is more the business sector, investments. Maybe some of you already have some background on sustainable finance as defined by the United Nations, especially for climate and conservation. So can I invite you to take a minute to imagine green fins in that direction? Mixing private funds with the usual money that we use to implement the program in your countries. Online participants should see the same question. Imagine green fins implemented with a mix of public and private funds. Now, next question is you look at that components page that we showed you today, right? The circles, the round shapes. What specific financing mechanisms can we explore for each component? This is the brainstorming part. Some of you already raised ideas. I'm gonna, give you an example. For example, the trainings in the country, the capacity building would still be, for example, possible to align with government agenda to train, ministry employees, MPA managers to be assessors. So that is one idea, for example. In terms of assessments, we've already mentioned, it has already been mentioned, assessment fees, for example. Okay. Chikal, can we go back to the slide, but just keep this presented and then go back to the Google Slides? Switch to Google Slides, yeah, great. Then next. Okay, so we are imagining, right? So what other sources of money can we, maybe explore? The keyword is explore for each of these components. And then last, this also in the breakout group, when you put these mechanisms, sticky notes on the paper, okay, in your table, you can start discussing considerations and opportunities for these to work. Meaning, what do we need to consider for this mechanism to work, right? But what we can do now is get a sticky note each, or grab a sticky note and first think of what specific financing mechanisms or activities can we explore for each component. It can be some things that, for example, from government perspective, if you already have financing mechanisms that you're exploring, please put that in the mix. Private payments, fees, for example, new e-courses for sale, products and services. Let's try to think. Okay, so we have 5 minutes to do this individually. Try to think as much as you can, and then it's a brain dump. So just put it on there on the sticky notes. Thank you so much. I know it's very tough because a lot of us always look at the nonprofit and public funding to support these components. So I invite you again to be more imaginative, like whatever you have heard from learned, if you have expertise in the business sector, please dump the idea. But the next 15 minutes, what we're going to ask you to do is to discuss the considerations and opportunities for this work. What does that mean? Considerations are, for example, okay, if this particular mechanism is something we want to explore, how will this work for Indonesia or for Malaysia? Now, let's say, I'll give you an example since we've already mentioned assessment fees. Will it be on top of a membership fee? Will it be managed by, these questions? It doesn't have to have answers, but some considerations. What do we need to consider for this mechanism to work in your context? Okay, so we will discuss this as a group. So share ideas. We've seen some really nice answers. You don't have to have a lot. So maybe discuss the top 3 to 5 ideas in the table, and then later we will share that in the plenary. So somebody has to share that here in front and talk about these mechanisms. What are the considerations, implications, or risks, for example, and then also opportunities, meaning is this something that you think can already be can have the opportunity to be implemented, stuff like that. Okay, I hope that is helpful. All right, 15 minutes starts now, and we'll hear you back later at the plenary. Thank you so much. Okay, so each table will share their discussion points. During plenary, sorry guys, I know you're so passionate about several points there. So our job is to listen to the discussion points. We don't need to interpret them now. We don't need to. There's no planning here, right? It's not actioning. It's more listening to these ideas, considerations, and implications. So is that good? Yeah. Because if you respond more, we will need more time. But of course, there's still space. If you really want to respond to a group's presentation, then feel free to. I will just limit it at least maybe one feedback from the group. And of course, you can always approach us later or approach that person. We can have conversations later on as well. In fact, yeah, especially for those staying in the hotel, we still have, I guess, tonight to catch up and talk about what has been discussed. All right, who wants to go first? Thank you. Thank you, Neil.
Do I need to stand for the camera? Okay, guys, I'll keep this short and sweet. Our group tried to focus on some points that may not be the obvious points of membership fees and brand collaboration, because I'm guessing a lot of you will think of that already. So we come for 3 key points that we think are more aimed for localized fundraising or gathering of funds. So our first point is to encourage your Greenfins members to do fundraisers. Okay, and ways you can do this, you can do it where Greenfins could consider making another level. You've got silver, gold, and bronze, where maybe if someone creates or donates $1,000 a year, for say, they become a platinum Fins member. So then they get an extra badge or something else to add to their website, to their marketing, to show that they're doing something actively for Greenfins and helping you guys to get some money to then go around and do your good work. The second point was more promotion of your courses. Obviously, you have some courses. Again, to your dive centers, your members, your Greenfins members, what we find at PADI, and I'm sure the other agencies do, is that especially for more people looking to do the dive master course, these are really key courses, what your guys do with dive guide course, items like this. Implementing this more to your members to try and get them to sell it, and probably not sell it, but push it to them. And again, maybe what you want to consider as a bit of a hook, whereas if a dive center does X amount of courses per year, the membership is discounted or maybe even free if they hit a certain level of courses over the year. So it's pushing them to try more to promote your Greenfins course, which you've got to get money rolling into the bank on a more common basis. The third point or idea was for the Greenfins team was to offer localized paid workshops. So maybe you go to an area, you arrange it, and in the morning, maybe you do like a mooring line workshop. Then you do a workshop along your Greenfins key points, and that's educating local areas and local divers. And again, it's another way to try and generate some local fins that will then maybe help with the assessors going around to different areas. But in Indonesia, to go to Manado, offer a workshop, charge a minimal rate, but it's obviously enough to make some money. That obviously covers a lot of the cost and the travel, and obviously gives some money back for future events. And then as you go around Indonesia, Thailand, there's lots of diving areas that maybe you can run these workshops on a yearly basis, and sort of half then covers your travel and expenses on the road. So they were we tried to keep it short and sweet with 3 key points that was a bit different. That was our 3 ideas, more localized. Any questions?
Those are very pragmatic and valuable, of course. Thank you so much. And just to say, actually, the first point, we were like, oh, there are activities in the pipeline that align with that as well, using dive centers as fundraisers. So thank you so much for validating that as well. Okay, I'm sure there will be questions if you want to ask each point. But again, our job is to listen with an open mind and see if this idea, gets validated over the next steps of our exercise in Greenfin's program transformation. Next, volunteers. I'm already standing here, Alvin. Let's give it around for Alvin again.
All right. So unfortunately, we weren't able to keep it that short, but going through, right? So we'll start with capacity building. For that one, besides the obvious, government budgets, grants, we also thought of things like environmental fees, So we do know governments, some local governments, they collect environmental fees, marine park fees, those kind of things, whether we could tap into that. Also, CSR companies, getting companies to sponsor the training, because now we're talking about assessors training, right? Not so much of certifying of the dive shop, but the assessors getting trained. And along that same lines, looking at if there's any HRDF funds, human resource development funds. So in Malaysia, like for example, for certain things you can apply to send your staff for training, and that means you'll get like a tax exemption. Yeah. So that's some options. Then for marketing and communication, we think that this is something that does not need too much funding, yeah, not too much cost. So one of the suggestions were to piggyback again on existing platforms with the government especially. So using their websites, their tourism websites to promote Greenfins, their environmental websites to promote Greenfins, their social media and so on. And then we also said media companies, right? Working with media companies, just like how we have going on in Japan. They're working with media companies and they are helping to promote the Greenfins approach. And along that line, expos, right? So we know we've got expos that happen around here. We've got dive expos, we've got tourism expos. We've got so many of these that happen at least 3-4 times a year. So can we make sure that they are giving us a free spot, they are helping us to promote it, they are giving us speaker opportunity, things like that. Now, another very interesting idea that came out was to sell some stuff, right? And in particular, the idea that was brought up was sunscreen, right? We are promoting environmentally friendly sunscreen. Is this something that we could sell? And a portion of that goes to promoting Greenfin efforts in the different locations. Okay. Also, like our friends in Thailand said, for example, for them, there a lot of the marketing and communication is sponsored by a foundation like ICA, ECCA. So a foundation is putting up the money to promote. Yeah, so that's something that other places can think about. Then the implementation part. Okay, so besides, yeah, we spoke about membership fees, we spoke about government budgets, grants. Now we had a similar idea to like what you said with the dive shops raising money, but what was proposed is like percentages of sales. So for example, a dive shop can have a special trip, right? A special trip and say like, all right, 10% of the profits from this sale is going to go to Greenfins, yeah, to promote Greenfins in this area. And also again, trying to get money from the MPA and conservation fees, right? More and more we are seeing everywhere there's some kind of tourism tax, tourism fees, conservation fees, but can we actually find a way to tap into these? Okay, then for the Digital infrastructure, again, similar things came up, right? Besides membership fees, e-courses, like you said, more courses that people will be willing to pay for, and that could help raise money to generate more courses. And then also maybe consider public donations, yeah? So yeah, there's a few different platforms. For example, global giving. I don't know how many of you are familiar with global giving, right? It's just like a platform where you put up a story and you say like, hey, we're trying to achieve this, to do this, and then people randomly just $10 here, $15 here, $100 here. It's a little bit money, but it adds up. We use that a little bit in Reef-Check Malaysia. Okay, and then intelligence reporting. So for us, we feel this main one's still going to be government because they are the ones that really want this information. So I think they would be possibly one of the main people who will be willing to pay for it. We also did say university and research institutes. Now, I don't think they would pay for it, but if we were giving them the information, they would be able to put a man on it to, or a woman on it to analyze the data and do that, right? So it's not our time. Yeah, I don't have to sit there and do the analysis. I give it to a university. They do it, they get to publish a paper, we get the information, everybody's happy. Yeah. And then policy and legislation, again, we've put here grants and government again, because, you know, that's what they are related to. I was talking to somebody, yeah, like blue economy, like what you were saying earlier with tourism, sustainable tourism. Yeah, maybe we can tap into that. But also, is there a way for us to tap into other international standards, right? So for example, green lists, IUCN green lists, right? Can it be a requirement that in all green list sites, green fins is adapted or promoted, right? And how about Insto? Are you all familiar with Insto? Have you all heard of Insto? Yeah? Yes, no, maybe, I don't know. Okay, it's a United Nations, 1 minute, I always use the acronym, I can't remember its real name. Okay, it's the United Nations Tourism International Network of Sustainable Tourism Observatories, right? So this is something, for example, that we are pushing with the different states in Malaysia. Okay, so not through the federal government, but the state government telling them like, hey, we want to make this destination an in-store destination. You need to come up with some requirements. Can we slit in green fins there? So automatically, if the government's working towards that, then budget will be allocated towards it, right? And did I get everything? I hope I did. Anything else? No? Okay, thank you for
Thank you so much, international group. And then we have the last table. Unless there's questions, comments, okay? Good stuff. Who's presenting from this table? Thank you, Raymond.
Cool. So from the group, the first one is about the implementation. So we were thinking about the greenfin assessment, right? So for the public or with using the public or government funding, that can be done for paying the staff time, like the assessor's staff time. If it's if the assessor comes from the government, but the condition that the greenfins framework should be included already in whatever government layers it is, right? So I mean, like, if it's MPA, then the MPA management body will be able to pay for the staff time. For the assessment, we were thinking also to use the private money which comes from the tourists actually to pay for the assessment. So we were talking like, so doing the assessment while doing also the profitable trip. So this will require us to focus or like more doing like sharper selection for the assessor candidates. I don't know in many areas, but in Jakarta, you have so many dive masters, instructors that actually also trip arrangers. I don't know if also that's the case in the Philippines, like trip arranger, trip organizers. So we should actually target those people that also have interest to provide like the best service for their guests. They want to bring the guests to a very nice dive operator that also apply green fins, right? So the cost of the assessment will be paid by the tourist. It will be giving like a lower cost opportunity for the dive operators, which will be assessed by the assessor. The assessor can actually add one more day to do the assessment, provide feedback, action plan, etc. And the guests can go back home, I mean, right? But we were also thinking about the cons. This may not work for all members. Imagine like if we have like 100 members in Indonesia, then we should actually have more than maybe like 20 assessors. But this can be started by focusing or like rating who should be the assessors. I think it should be broadened. It should be wider than NGO people, government, etc. Right? Cool. Next one, the awareness raising for marine tourism industry for the capacity building. We were thinking also the NGO can pay for the assessment. Let's say, imagine if there are so many NGOs that that have been facilitating small community-based ecotourism. So the NGO will get benefit from for the profile, because the NGO will be able to say to the donors like, hey, you know what? The community that we have been facilitating, they are certified with green fins. There will be the benefit for the NGOs, like more opportunities to get the grant from their donors. But at the same time, we're gonna have more members of green fins. And while at the same time also the NGO will help the small, medium enterprise to transition from and preparing the cost for the assessment, like in the next like 3 years or like 4 years. There. For marketing and publicity, we were thinking to recruit also assessor from media, from influencers. But we have to also accept that if we train 20 assessors, not everyone will be ready to do the assessment. There's always like a marketing principle saying like there's always a ratio in selling, right? I mean, like you offer this to 20 people and maybe like 5 of them will be like a hardcore green fins assessor. Maybe like you're gonna lose like 15. So there's always ratio in everything. So I think expanding the perspective of who should be recruited as assessor is important. So I'm thinking about media influencers, media people influencers, siapa lagi? Who else? Artist, celebrity. They will be proud because they are the assessors, and they will actually spread out the word about, like, I'm a green fins assessor, and you know what? I will tell you more about green fins. So I think that's another potential thing. And the last part, for the monitoring, evaluation, and learning, I think it's good also to integrate green fins statistic with the national government-owned data system. So green fins is displayed as one of the criteria in the national government system. Like in Indonesia, we have SIDACO system. Yeah, conservation database system. So include green fins as one of the indicators or variables in that dashboard. Will also be promoting the green fins. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you so much for investing your last hour discussing these ideas, and these are all valuable. Any question for that particular presentation? Amazing, by the way, that you discussed that in the 15-20 minutes that you had. We are also receiving responses online. May I call in our programs officer, digital community, Erin Canto, to share. Hi, Erin.
Hi.
What are we feeling from our friends abroad?
Reporting live from the Philippines now. Yeah, I have a couple of responses here, more on capacity building. We've also have increased membership rates, just like your guys discussing about.
Interesting. And I also see some specific things that stand out. Business licensing requiring memberships. That's something that's happening. I think that's happened also before. Thank you, Erin. And next slide. I think this is our last. Before I summarize and before I process the next steps. Next, please. No, on Menti. Menti. This time, we are going to request everyone, again, to use your phone. I promise you, this is our last Menti prompt, and it's not super difficult. This is just to please share your feedback for this workshop. Is our evaluation form. So please rate us online, depending on the value of that you feel. The QR code is not visible now, but you can go to menti.com and use that code on the screen. Oh, sorry. There you go. There. It's us your feedback. Thank you so much. And in the meantime, Reef-World staff, you don't need to give feedback. If you still want to tell us something more in private, we are still here until end of day. So please, we also, especially for the ones that first time maybe hearing from Greenfins, feel free to approach any Reef-World staff, provide your feedback, and we've documented all of these, and our job is to analyze it. While completing the feedback form, let's thank the online participants for joining. We will disconnect from the call, but also a big round of applause for everyone for making it through. You're survivors of this 2-day program. So my job is to summarize and to present next steps, but I think just want to be very straight to what we need to do next.
So you'll all be receiving access to all of the presentation slides that you saw during the last 2 days. Plus, we'll be putting together a summary with the key points that were that really shone out to us over the last 2 days, specifically for the Indonesian road mapping yesterday, and then today for our learning exchange. So that will be emailed to you. As long as you wrote your email address down on the registration form, we'll have a way to get you access to that folder.